We have another magical bedtime story tonight. I know you use these whispers to fall asleep. So, before your eyes get heavy, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. And while you're still here, where in the world are you listening from? What time is it where you are? Let us know, if you're awake long enough to type. Now lie back. Let your blanket wrap around you like an invisibility cloak. Take a breath. Feel the sheet settle. And listen closely, because these are no ordinary tales. What you'll hear tonight are the secret thoughts of Harry Potter himself, kept safe inside the quiet pages of his diary. Moments never read aloud before. Not from the newspapers. Not from textbooks. But from beneath his pillow, in the soft space between dreams and danger. A quick recap, just in case you missed part 1. Year 1, the boy in the cupboard and the letter that changed everything. Year 2, whispers in the walls and a door that never should have opened. Year 3, shadows in hoods, the truth about his past, and the stag that lives inside him. If you haven't heard that story yet, you'll find it waiting on our channel, ready to lull you into a gentler sleep. We'll still be here when you return. Tonight, part 2, the middle years. Year 4, the fire and the maze, dragons, mer songs, and a cup that was really a trap. Year 5, Prophecies, pink quills, and a corridor lined with whispers in the Department of Mysteries. Year 6, a prince who wrote in margins, an emerald flash on a lightning-struck tower, and a white tomb by the lake. These are the years where magic begins to hurt, and yet, it never stops glowing. Every fear. Every friendship. Every flicker of light before the spell was cast. Harry writes it all, because writing is how he remembers to breathe. So close your eyes if you'd like. Let the castle find you. And if this story lingers, if the magic hums softly in your dreams, leave a comment below and tell us. If enough dreamers ask, we'll return once more, for Year 7, where the Hallows wake and the war finds its final name. But for now, just listen. July 31st, somewhere very late. I'm writing this by the light of the fire. It's still raining outside. The sea won't shut up. The wind keeps pushing at the walls like it wants in. It's my birthday, well, I think it is. The clock's just past midnight. Technically. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? The Dursleys are asleep in the next room, Uncle Vernon snoring like his soaring logs, Dudley curled on the couch with his new rifle still. And there, the diary snaps shut, the candle flickers, and the story begins. August 1st, the dream felt more real than the room. I woke up with my heart pounding and my pillow damp. Not from sweat, though maybe a little, but from something colder. I think it was fear. Or memory. Or maybe both. My scar hurt. It hadn't in so long, I almost forgot what it felt like. A slow, crawling burn. Not sharp like a curse, but deep, like something waking up far away and dragging me with it. I pressed my hand against it, the way you might press a bruise just to check if it's real. It was. The room was still. Summer air drifting through the open window, the smell of cut grass and pavement. Hedwig rustled quietly in her cage, and the street outside was empty, just shadows and birdsong. But inside me, something was echoing. Something I saw in the dream. There was a room, stone walls, high and windowless. Lit by firelight that didn't seem to flicker. A snake coiled by the hearth, watching. And two men, one tall, stooped, nervous. The other, smaller, shrouded, but humming with a kind of power that made my skin crawl even in sleep. They were talking about me. Not just my name. Me. The smaller one, him, I think, he gave the order. The boy must be watched. And then the tall man turned. And I knew him. Wormtail. Peter Pettigrew. The rat who betrayed my parents. The one who got away. That's when the pain flared. The scar, searing white behind my eyes. And I woke up choking on air, I haven't told anyone yet. I don't know how. What do you say? Hi, it's me. Harry. My scar hurts again, and I think Voldemort's getting stronger in a house I saw in a dream. No one wants to hear that. Not the Dursleys. Not even Ron or Hermione, not yet. I did write to Sirius. Told him I was fine. Which was a lie. But not a big one. Just the kind you tell someone who's hiding from the world because of you. The truth is, the summer feels hollow. No Hogwarts. No owls in the rafters. No smell of parchment or the soft creak of the common room stairs. Just me. This bed. This scar. I don't know why it started hurting again now. But I think something is moving. Something dark. And this time, it's not just in dreams. August 23rd, there's no place like this anywhere else in the world. I woke up to the sound of something clanking outside the window. For a second, I thought I was still dreaming. That maybe the snake and the scar and the cold whisper in my head had followed me to the morning. But it wasn't magic. It was Ron's dad, Arthur Weasley, trying to pick the lock on the Dursleys' front door with what looked like a pair of enchanted pliers and a grin too big for a weekday. Harry. All set. Just like that, I was out. Out of the house. Out of that small room. Out of the silence. And into the burrow. The Weasleys' home smells like warm bread and polished wood and something always bubbling on the stove. The stairs squeak differently than the ones at Privet Drive. Here, they sound like someone remembering laughter. Mrs. Weasley hugged me twice. Ginny smiled like she forgot to be shy. Fred and George levitated my trunk upstairs just to show off. And Ron just clapped me on the back and said, "Finally." Hermione was already there. She'd arrived the day before and was halfway through a book on Quidditch referees. I hadn't realized how much I missed her until she started correcting Fred mid-sentence and I felt normal again. But this wasn't just a visit. This was something bigger. The Quidditch World Cup. Everyone's been talking about it. Ireland versus Bulgaria. Entire wizarding families camping in enchanted tents. Portkeys and platforms and stadiums built into valleys with magic thicker than mist. We're going. Mr. Weasley got tickets through work, ministry connections, and even Percy looked smug about it, which is impressive considering Percy's normal expression is somewhere between disappointed and examining a quill for defects. I couldn't sleep last night. Not because I was scared. Because I was excited. And maybe that's why the scar hasn't hurt since I arrived. Maybe being around people who care about me, people who fight over toast and pass notes under the table and argue about dress robes, it makes the shadows a little quieter. I don't know. All I know is I'm here. And tomorrow, I'll be standing beneath a sky filled with brooms and cheers and magic that isn't trying to hurt anyone. Just for a while. August 25th, the night burned brighter than the match ever did. It started like a dream. Green hills. Shimmering tents. Magic in the air thick enough to touch. The Quidditch World Cup was everything I imagined it would be and more. There were broomsticks streaking overhead before we even reached the pitch. Whole families camping under floating flags. A wizarding village built in a field for a single night. Our tent was enchanted. Bigger on the inside, of course. For beds, a stove, even a mirror that tried to complement Ron's hair. It was perfect. And then came the match. Ireland versus Bulgaria. The stadium was beyond massive, rows upon rows of gold-plated seats climbing into the clouds, flags whipping wild above enchanted torches. And when the game started, the Irish chasers moved like lightning. The Bulgarian seeker, Crumb, flew like he'd been born with wings instead of arms. There was cheering, laughter, fireworks in the shape of shamrocks and leprechauns. Ireland won, but Crumb caught the snitch. And somehow, everyone was happy. It felt like magic was being used exactly as it should be, for joy. But it didn't last. It never does. Later that night, I woke to shouting. Screams in the camp. Tents torn. Fires rising. Shadows moving in the smoke. It was chaos, Death Eaters in black masks, casting spells that shattered the ground and flipped entire camps like cards. Muggles floating in the air, limp and turning slowly like forgotten dolls. We ran. Ron. Hermione. Me. The air smelled like burnt parchment and fear. People were crying, disapparating, vanishing into the dark. I couldn't see anyone I knew. Only flames and panic. Then, above it all, in the sky, a green light twisted itself into shape. Not a spell. Not a firework. A symbol. The dark mark. A skull? With a serpent curling out of its mouth, like a tongue. The same mark burned into Death Eater's skin. The same one that appeared the night my parents died. Someone cast it. But who? We found Winky, Mr. Crouch's house elf, faint and trembling, and my wand clutched in her hand. It was missing from my pocket. I don't remember losing it. But the spell was cast with it. The ministry didn't believe her. Or me. Not really. Even Mr. Weasley looked worried, though he tried not to show it. That night, long after the tents had vanished and the fires were out, I looked up at the sky again. It was clear. Stars blinking softly overhead. But all I could see was that skull. Floating. Waiting. Watching. September 1st, the train feels slower when you're worried what's waiting at the end of it. I kept thinking about the sky. Even days later, after we packed the tents and left the fields and the ministry swept everything quiet again, I couldn't stop seeing that green skull above the trees. It shouldn't have appeared. Not after all this time. Not after everything that's supposed to be over. But no one talks about it now. Not really. Mr. Weasley said the ministry was handling it. Hermione said Winky was probably bewitched. Ron said we should just focus on the school year. So I tried. The Hogwarts Express was waiting, just like always, red and whistling faint steam into the air. The platform was noisy, parents hugging, trolleys clattering, last-minute owls swooping over heads. Mrs. Weasley kissed Ron's forehead like it was still his first year. Fred and George slipped me a chocolate frog and whispered something about a new product line they were working on. Ginny waved. And then I was on board. Back in the compartment with Ron and Hermione, watching the countryside blur past in greens and browns, just like always. Only, not quite like always. There's something different this year. The teachers all looked more serious on the platform. Even the air feels tense. Like the castle's bracing itself. And then we got the letter. The Triwizard Tournament. Hermione read it aloud, her prefect badge gleaming a little too brightly. It's a magical competition between schools. Hogwarts. Beauxbatons. Durmstrang. 3 champions. 1 from each. Dangerous. Banned for over a century. Now returning. And no one under 17 allowed to enter. That part felt especially directed at me. Ron looked disappointed. I think he imagined himself holding a trophy in front of the whole school. Hermione started immediately speculating about safety protocols. And me? I just stared at the letter and thought, why now? When the castle came into view, I felt that familiar hum in my chest. Like it remembered me. The boats on the lake. The lanterns in the trees. The towers climbing into mist. It all looked exactly the same. But I could feel something underneath it. Something stirring. Like the floorboards of Hogwarts had started whispering in their sleep again. And whatever dream they're having, I think I'm already in it. October 30th, there's a kind of magic that doesn't shimmer. It waits. Like breath before a storm. We felt it before we saw them. The whole school gathered outside in their cloaks, frost curling at the edges of the lawn. The lake was still as ink. And then the wind shifted. Beauxbatons arrived first. Their carriage came from the sky, a giant, pale blue thing the size of a house, pulled by winged horses the size of elephants. They landed like a sigh, their hooves barely touching grass. The horses' breath steamed gold. At the door of the carriage, a tall woman stepped out, taller than Hagrid, with robes like carved ice. Madame Maxim. Headmistress. Dignified. Imperious. Beautiful in the way statues are beautiful. Her students followed, elegant, reserved, like they were born from snowfall. Then came 𝒍𝒆𝒑. From the lake. A black ship, rising up from beneath the surface, as if the water had decided to let go of a secret. Wood so dark and steaming. Sails furled. And from the hold, figures emerged, thick coats, pale faces, sharp eyes that watched everything. And him. Viktor Krum. Seeker for Bulgaria. The one who caught the snitch. Every student knew his name, but no one expected him to be here. A real champion. A boy like us. Only, not. Later that night, Dumbledore made the announcement. His voice carried like the last note of a spell. The Triwizard Tournament would begin. The rules were simple, one champion from each school. Selected by the Goblet of Fire, a magical cup, blue-flamed and ancient, placed in the Great Hall beneath a drawn age line. No one under 17 could apply. You had to place your name into the fire. And if chosen, the goblet's decision was binding. No quitting. No backing out. No exceptions. Fred and George tried to trick the age line, of course. Swallowed an aging potion and leapt across it like it was a game. It wasn't. They were thrown backward. Beards trailing like silver rope, and landed on each other in a tangle of limbs and protest. Ron laughed so hard he nearly choked on his pumpkin juice. Even I laughed. But somewhere beneath the laughter, I could feel the fire watching. That goblet, it's not just wood and runes. It's alive in a way most things aren't. It listens. And I think it was already listening to me. Even though I never planned to say a word. October 31st, my name didn't echo like the others. It landed. Hard. Like a curse breaking open. The hall was golden with candlelight. The goblet burned blue at the front, a low flame swaying as if listening to something none of us could hear. Everyone was holding their breath. You could feel the moment stretch, like a wand drawn before a duel. First name, Viktor Krum. 𝒍𝒆𝒑 erupted in applause. He didn't flinch. Just nodded once, sharp and low, like he'd been waiting for this since birth. Second name, 𝒍𝒆𝒑. The girls from Beauxbatons lit up like starlight. She stood like she was floating. Pale hair catching the flame. Eyes calm and unreadable. Third name, Cedric Diggory. Hufflepuff exploded. Cedric looked shocked, just for a moment, then smiled, kind, modest, steady. The kind of boy even other houses liked. It was done. 3 champions. 3 schools. The flame dimmed. The tension broke. And then it burned again. A 4th name. Everyone turned. Dumbledore caught the parchment midair. The room hushed, as if the castle itself leaned forward. He read it aloud. Harry Potter. It didn't feel like my name. Not in that moment. It felt like I'd stolen something. A seat I never reached for. A path I didn't choose. I didn't put my name in. I didn't. But the silence didn't believe me. I walked forward like I was underwater. The looks on their faces, I'll never forget them. Shock. Confusion. Anger. Ron's was the worst. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Wouldn't speak. Dumbledore pulled me aside. Asked if I did it. His voice wasn't angry. But not soft, either. Like he couldn't believe I hadn't. I told him no. Told him again. He believed me. I think. But others, they didn't say anything. They just stared. Like I'd cheated. Lied. Betrayed some invisible oath. The champions were told to prepare. Meet the judges. Begin training. But I wasn't a champion. I was an accident. A name thrown in by someone else. For what? I don't know. But someone wants me in that tournament. And I think they want me to lose. November 5th, I'm being trained to die in front of a crowd. And I can't even tell anyone why. They gave us a golden egg. A prize, they said. A clue for the first task. It's smooth and heavy, warm in my hands like it remembers something. But when I open it, it screams, an awful, piercing cry like metal grinding underwater. Everyone else says it's supposed to help, to guide us toward survival. All it does is hurt. Ron still isn't talking to me. He walks past me in the corridors like I'm just another face. Like I wanted this. Like I climbed into the spotlight and dragged the fire with me. I can't explain it. Can't fix it. And somehow that feels worse than the dragons. Yes. Dragons. That's what the first task is. Hagrid told me, his eyes shining with the dangerous kind of pride that only Hagrid can carry. He snuck me out after dark, past the forest, where the handlers were preparing them. For dragons. For champions. Each of us will face one. And survive. Or not. I'm not ready. There's no way to be ready for something that breathes fire and hates you on sight. But help came. Strange, unexpected help. Cedric. He's the only one who should be angry with me, who has every reason to hate me, but he's not. He's kind. Level. He warned me to look at the egg. To figure it out soon. Because time is running out. Then Moody stepped in. He's not like other professors. There's something about him, one eye that sees too much and a voice like gravel underfoot. But he helped. He gave me a direction. Not spells. Not potions. Just a word, flying. That's when I knew. If I had any chance at all, it would be on a broom. My broom. So now I'm training. Quietly. Alone. Early mornings and late nights, casting summoning charms over and over until my fingers ache and the wind feels like it's pushing back. Accio broom. Accio broom. Accio broom. Sometimes it comes. Sometimes it doesn't. And I wonder, what if I call and it doesn't answer when it matters? What if I fall? What if that's what someone wants? But I won't stop. Because no matter who put my name in, no matter why they want me in that arena, I'm not going down easy. November 24th, the dragon wasn't the scariest part. It was the silence right before. The morning of the first task, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Like the air had thickened with every step toward the arena. Every heartbeat louder than footsteps. They kept us waiting in a tent behind the stadium. Cedric. Fleur. Crumb. Me. No one spoke much. Fleur was pale, but calm. Crumb sat hunched, eyes hard, as if already flying. Cedric paced, jaw clenched. And I just sat there, trying not to shake. Bagman came in, all cheer and booming voice, like it was a game. He offered us a bag, for tiny models of dragons inside, each one twitching, snarling, miniature teeth bared. I reached in. Hungarian horntail. The worst one. Of course. When it was my turn, I stepped out and the world exploded. The stands were packed. Hundreds of eyes, shouts, Cheers, some for me, some not. The wind was sharp. A. D. Suddenly. I could breathe again. Up. Into the air. Away from the fire, the teeth, the claws. She roared and lunged, tail whipping stone like thunder. But I moved. Dove. Climbed. Spun. The stadium blurred. The wind was mine. She chased me, wings tearing the sky. Fire grazed my robes. And then, I saw it. The egg. Gleaming, unguarded for a heartbeat. I dived. Faster than thought. Closer than safe. My fingers closed around the gold, just as her jaws snapped shut behind me. And it was over. The cheers came after. But in that moment, it wasn't about the crowd. It was about not dying. I landed, breathless, smoke still in my lungs. The egg clutched to my chest. Madame Pomfrey scolded me for a burn on my arm. Hermione hugged me so tight I nearly dropped the egg. Even Ron. Ron came back. He didn't say sorry. Just looked at me and muttered, "You could have told me about the dragons." And I smiled. Because sometimes, that's all you need. December 3rd, everyone cheers when you survive the dragon. But they don't follow you into the quiet that comes after. There's something strange about the days after the first task. No screaming crowds. No dragons. No fire. Just long corridors, frost on the windows, and too many people looking at me like they still don't know whether to be impressed or suspicious. They cheer when it's loud. But when it's quiet, they stare. The egg sits at the foot of my bed now. Glistening gold, beautiful and cold. I've opened it 3 times. Each time, it screams. Not a normal sound. Not pain. Not words. Just a shriek that fills your skull until your ears ring and your thoughts scatter like birds. Hermione says it's a riddle. That magic sometimes hides meaning in chaos. She's probably right. She usually is. But I haven't had the energy to chase noise into meaning. Ron's back to being Ron. He asked if I could summon snacks from the kitchen with my wand. I tried. We got a spoon. He said it was close enough. I didn't realize how much I missed the way he jokes until he made fun of my hair again. Hermione's different lately. Quieter. Watching Ron more than usual. And he doesn't notice. I don't think he ever notices. Sometimes I feel like I'm watching both of them from behind glass. The other champions, Cedric, Fleur, Crumb, they all carry themselves like they belong here. Like they understand why the goblet chose them. I still don't. Moody pulled me aside after class. His magical eye spun while his normal one stayed locked on mine. Constant vigilance, he growled. He meant more than just dark wizards. I think he was warning me. About what? I'm not sure. At night, I can't sleep. I lie in the dark and listen to the wind press against the castle walls. Sometimes I hear the egg shriek in my dreams, even when it's closed. And in those dreams, I see the goblet again, flaming, hungry, whispering my name without sound. Not asking. Summoning. Maybe that's the real task. Not the dragon. Not the egg. But the waiting. The not knowing. The feeling that something's watching you from just beyond the edge of your vision. And you don't know if it wants you to win or burn. December 15th, snow is quieter at Hogwarts. But nerves are louder. It snowed this morning. Thick, slow flakes drifting down like feathers shaken from some giant, invisible pillow. The castle looks like a music box under glass, towers capped with white, courtyards glistening, the lake frozen still. Everything looks peaceful. But inside, everyone is panicking. Because the Yule Ball is coming. And apparently, we're expected to dance. The champions are supposed to lead the opening. That means me. In front of everyone. No broom. No wand. No dragon to fight. Just awkward footsteps and music I've never heard before. I think I'd rather face another Horntail. Ron's in denial. He keeps saying plenty of time, while turning red every time Fleur-Delica walks by. Hermione's tight-lipped. She's already got a date, she says, but won't say who. That makes Ron even more irritable. As for me, I tried to ask Cho Chang. I really did. I caught her after Charm's voice cracking like a bad spell, and blurted it out before my brain could stop me. She smiled. Apologized. She's going with Cedric. Of course she is. I ended up asking Parvati Patil. She said yes, kindly, with a giggle that made me feel slightly less like a troll. She's even convincing her sister to go with Ron. Which is generous. And brave. I've never worn dress robes before. Mine are dark green and a little stiff. Hermione says they make me look taller. Ron's are maroon and vintage, which, apparently, is wizard code for ancient. He hates them. He swore vengeance on every lace frill and refused to come down from the dormitory until I dragged him. The hall that night, it didn't look like Hogwarts. The walls shimmered with silver frost. Ice sculptures glowed from within. The tables were round and clothed in velvet. Candles floated low, warm and golden. Music swelled from a platform where goblins played strange, soft instruments. It was beautiful. Terrifying. But beautiful. The dancing wasn't as awful as I feared. I only stepped on Parvati's foot once. Maybe twice. The rest of the night passed in a blur of laughter and clinking goblets. Fleur floated. Crumb barely spoke. Cedric and Cho looked perfect. And then I saw Hermione. Her hair done in soft curls. Her dress, blue, floating like ocean water. Her smile, different somehow. Grown. She was with Crumb. Ron nearly swallowed his own tongue. He sulked the rest of the night, muttering things I pretended not to hear. Hermione left early. I couldn't sleep again. Too much to think about. The ball. The egg. The silence after the music. And the way Hermione's eyes looked a little wet before she disappeared into the crowd. I think we're all growing up. And I don't think we know what to do with it yet. February 24th, the lake looked calm. But underneath, it remembered everything. The clue was always there. The egg screamed when opened, until Cedric pulled me aside, awkward but honest, and said, "Take a bath with it." He didn't mean it literally. Or maybe he did. Either way, it worked. Moaning Myrtle found me first. Floating above the water in the prefect's bathroom, eyes wide and voice soft. I almost dropped the egg when she popped out of the tap. But she told me, put it under the water. So I did. And it changed. The scream became a song. Garbled, distorted, but still a message. Come seek us where our voices sound, we cannot sing above the ground. I didn't understand it all, but I understood this: the next task would be in the lake. And we'd be expected to retrieve something taken, something precious. But how? I couldn't breathe underwater. I searched everywhere. Books on gillyweed, bubblehead charms, enchanted gills, everything. Hermione tried, too, though I didn't tell her exactly why. And then? The night before the task, I still had nothing. I was going to drown. That's when Dobby came. Burst into the dormitory like a wind-up toy at midnight, bouncing with panic. He brought gillyweed, a slimy, rubbery plant meant to be chewed. It will help Harry Potter breathe underwater, he squeaked, eyes huge. I didn't question it. I didn't have time. The lake was still that morning. I stood with the other champions, Cedric, Fleur, Crumb, trying to keep my hands from shaking. The whistle blew. I dove. The gillyweed worked. My neck tingled. My lungs shrank. And suddenly, I had gills, cool, rushing water sliding into them like wind. I could swim. Not like a boy. Like something meant to live down there. The lake was deeper than I imagined. Silent. Endless. And not empty. Merpeople swam through the dark, watching with wary eyes. There were kelp forests, broken statues, things I couldn't name drifting in the currents. I found them all in a row. Ron. Hermione. Jo. Fleur's sister. Tied below, asleep. One for each champion. We were meant to take just one. But Fleur hadn't come. I couldn't leave her sister. I couldn't. So I untied both Ron and Gabrielle. The merpeople didn't stop me, but they watched. On the surface, I was exhausted. Soaked. Shivering. But alive. The judges talked. Whispered. Argued. I came in last, technically. But Dumbledore gave me high marks for moral fiber. Ron said it was the most Gryffindor thing I'd ever done. Hermione hugged me. Twice. Crumb asked her for a walk by the lake later. And I saw something flicker in Ron's expression. The sun came out that afternoon. The lake sparkled. But part of me was still deep beneath the water. With songs no one else could hear. March 17th, it's not the dark that scares me. It's how familiar it's starting to feel. There's this moment after the second task when everything slows. People congratulate you. Teachers nod politely. Students move on to exams and gossip and the next Quidditch match. But beneath it all, something is changing. The air tastes different. Like stormlight and iron. Sirius wrote back. His letter was short. Rushed. He told me not to ignore the dreams. That my scar hurting isn't just a coincidence. That Karkaroff, Durmstrang's headmaster, has a dark mark burned into his arm, just like the Death Eaters. And most chilling of all. The signs are gathering again, Harry. Keep your wand ready. Trust no one completely. And watch your back. I read it 3 times by candlelight before tucking it into my trunk, hidden between socks and chocolate frog cards. And the dreams have come back. Not just shapes. Corridors. Doors. Voices. I see a room I've never entered, filled with cold wind and snake-like whispers. And Voldemort. Not clearly. Just glimpses. The shape of his shadow. The sound of Pettigrew's voice, high and trembling. I wake with my scar burning and my sheets tangled like vines. Even Barty Crouch, one of the tournament judges, is acting strangely. He vanished from the ministry weeks ago. Shows up briefly at Hogwarts looking half ghost, rambling about rules and justice, then disappears again like smoke. No one explains. No one asks. And no one seems to think it's odd. But I do. I've learned to pay attention to things that don't make sense. Hermione is still in the library constantly. She started a new campaign, SPEW, to protect house elves, and she's as passionate as ever. Ron rolls his eyes, but deep down, I think he's proud of her. Crumb keeps lingering nearby. Always quiet. Always watching Hermione. I wish I could tell if he's just a boy with a crush or something else. There's talk of the 3rd task now. Whispers of something dangerous. A maze, maybe. But no official announcement yet. I catch Cedric in the corridor sometimes. He smiles, but it's thinner now. Less bright. I think he feels it, too. Something is coming. I don't know if it's part of the tournament or something using the tournament as a curtain. But I know the signs. I know how the air feels before lightning strikes. And I can feel the clouds building. June 24th, I thought the maze would test my courage. I didn't know it would test my fate. They built it on the Quidditch pitch. The grass was gone. The sky was too quiet. And where there used to be cheers and bludgers and broomsticks, there were walls, towering hedges, green as ink and twice as silent. The maze. For weeks, we trained. Spell after spell, stunning, shielding, lighting charms. Dumbledore said it would be about wits and nerve. But something about the way he looked at me when he said it. He knew. He always knows. They lined us up at the edge, just before sunset. The walls rustled like they were breathing. The stands were full, but I couldn't hear the crowd. Only the wind. Cedric and I stood side by side. He looked calm, determined. Fleur to our left. Crumb to our right. Bagman raised his wand. And the maze opened. The hedges closed behind me. Instantly, the world changed. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was swallowing. The paths twisted without sound. Magic pulsed faintly underfoot, as if the ground itself was waiting. I passed shifting walls. A blast-ended Scroot. A boggart that turned into Voldemort, his face as pale and hollow as my worst thoughts. I banished it. But my hands trembled afterward. Then I heard something. Screaming. It was Fleur. A flash of red light. Gone. I ran, wand tight in my hand, and nearly collided with Crumb. His eyes were blank. Empty. And he cast the Cruciator's curse on Cedric. I stunned him before I even thought. Cedric looked at me, shaken, then nodded. We moved forward. Together. That's when we saw it. The cup. Glowing softly in a clearing of stillness. No monsters. No traps. Just us. And the finish line. We looked at each other. We'd made it. And so, we agreed, we'd take it together. A Hogwarts win. Shared. We counted to 3. Touched it at once. And the maze disappeared. We didn't return to the stadium. We landed in a graveyard. Dead silence. Gravestones rising crooked and forgotten. A cold wind whispering things I couldn't understand. And then I saw the name. Tom Riddle. And the cup, it wasn't a prize. It was a portkey. A trap. Cedric looked at me. Confused. Before he could speak. Kill the spare. A voice. Cold. Casual. And then, green light. Cedric fell. Like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Just like that. Gone. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. The graveyard closed around me like a fist. And then? He rose. June 24th, later, there are moments where time doesn't move forward. It just falls. Like ash. Cedric was still lying next to me. Eyes open. Unblinking. And the grass beneath him didn't remember he had ever stood. I couldn't cry. Not yet. There wasn't space in me for grief. Just horror. And heat. And a heartbeat that didn't feel like mine. Wormtail appeared, his wand raised, his hand, silver. He bound me to a gravestone, Tom Riddle's. I couldn't move. Could barely breathe. Then he dropped something into a cauldron. Bones. Sliced his own arm. Took my blood. Blood of the enemy, forcibly taken. The air thickened. Magic like smoke. It swirled and hissed and spun. And then he was there. Voldemort. Returned. He looked human. Almost. But wrong. Eyes red. Skin pale as death. His voice smooth, sharp as broken glass. And he smiled. Like the world was finally back the way he wanted. He summoned the Death Eaters. They came crawling from shadows. Masks and cloaks. Some I recognized. Some who hid behind power, behind money, behind lies. And Voldemort mocked them all. He told them I had escaped him as a baby. That he had been weakened by love. But that now, he was whole again. And I would die properly this time. He gave me my wand back. Told me to bow. Said we'd duel. There was no escape. No help. Just his voice and my fear and Cedric's body a few steps away. But I raised my wand. Expelliarmus. He cast at the same moment. And our spells met. Not like sparks. Like beams, gold and green, colliding, locking. The air tore apart. The wand sang. We were connected. And then, ghost-like forms began to rise. From Voldemort's wand. Cedric appeared first. He looked at me and said, "Take my body back." Then others, a woman I didn't know. A man. And then, my mum. My dad. They stood beside me. Whispered courage into me. Told me when the connection broke, run. Take Cedric. Use the cup. Get away. I listened. I broke the connection. Grabbed Cedric. The portkey flared. And I left that place of death, just as Voldemort screamed behind me. We landed in the stadium. Crowds cheered. Until they saw Cedric. The cheering stopped. And all that was left was silence. And me, shaking, holding a boy who would never wake up again. June 25th, the worst thing about grief is how the world keeps moving. Even when you can't. I don't remember getting back to the castle. Just flashes. Mad-Eye Moody pulling me away. Whispers in the dark. His voice low. Urgent. Too urgent. Then his eye was spinning. His hand shaking. He knew things he shouldn't. What I'd seen. What I'd heard. Things I hadn't told anyone. And then I realized. That wasn't Moody. It was Barty Crouch Jr. Using Polyjuice Potion. He had been pretending to be Moody for nearly the entire year. Feeding me hints. Guiding me through the tournament. Manipulating the maze. He put my name in the goblet. He made sure I got to Voldemort. All of it, a plan. He would have killed me if Dumbledore hadn't burst in when he did. The real Moody was found in a trunk. Alive, barely. Cursed, bound, hidden. The truth came out in bursts. Fudge. McGonagall. Snape. Dumbledore. All standing over me as if they still couldn't believe it. But I could. Because I had seen him. Voldemort. Alive. Whole. And Cedric. His parents came. Mr. Diggory knelt beside him, whispering words no one should ever have to say. Mrs. Diggory didn't cry. She just looked at me. As if I'd returned from a place her son couldn't follow. I told Dumbledore everything. The graveyard. The spell. My parents. And he believed me. But the Ministry didn't. Fudge refused to accept Voldemort's return. Called it confusion. Hallucination. Said Crouch was mad. Said I was just a boy. It was easier that way. For him. But not for us. Dumbledore stood at the leaving feast. He didn't let Hogwarts celebrate. He told the truth. Out loud. Said Voldemort was back. Said Cedric Diggory was murdered. The hall went quiet. Even the walls seemed to listen. Later that night, Hermione cried in the common room. Ron sat beside her, eyes glassy. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. There weren't words for the shape grief takes when you're 15. Just silence. And a wand tucked beneath your pillow. And dreams full of green light. I don't know what comes next. But I know the world isn't the same. And I'm not either. June 30th, leaving Hogwarts used to feel like pressing pause. Now it feels like walking away from the only place that understands. The trunks are packed. The dormitory is quieter than it's ever been. Even the castle seems to know this year has ended on a different note. Not with cheers. Not with house cup points or sweet farewells. Just grief. And warnings. The train whistle echoed through the valley this morning. We boarded like sleepwalkers, Ron, Hermione, and me, all three of us moving in a kind of hush. Even Fred and George didn't crack many jokes. Ginny didn't say much either. The train rumbled forward. And still, I kept thinking about Cedric. His empty seat. His parents on the platform, staring through us as we passed. Their son should have been with us. Laughing. Talking about the holidays. But he wasn't. And nothing I say will ever fix that. Hermione had her books out before we even passed Hogsmeade. But she wasn't reading. Ron was picking at a chocolate frog wrapper he hadn't opened. I stared out the window. Fields. Hills. The world moving past like nothing had changed. But everything has. Before we left, Dee won't run. Not anymore. July 12th, some nights, the wind carries whispers. And I think magic is just the part of the world that listens. The Dursleys haven't changed. Dudley still stomps around like a spoiled troll. Aunt Petunia wipes every surface twice. Uncle Vernon watches the news with a red face and mutters things like bloody nonsense every time they mention anything remotely strange. They haven't said a word about Cedric. Not even when I came home quieter than usual. Not even when I stopped asking for pudding or second helpings. I'm just the boy who lives in the cupboard to them again. But that's fine. Because I'm not really here. I'm still on that platform. Still hearing Cedric's father cry. Still seeing green light bloom like a flower made of silence. Hedwig came today. She brought a letter. From Sirius. Stay sharp. Stay kind. I'm closer than you think. He doesn't say where. Doesn't sign his name. But I can feel his presence in every curl of ink. It helps. I sit in my room at night, sometimes with a candle burning low, this diary in my lap, and I write to feel less alone. Ron's letters come every other day, full of spelling mistakes and Quidditch rants and questions he forgets to answer. Hermione's are neater. Longer. She asks how I'm sleeping. I don't tell her the truth. Some nights I do sleep. And in those dreams, I'm not in the graveyard. I'm in the common room, by the fire. Cedric is there. Sirius. Even my parents. They smile. They don't speak. But they don't need to. Because I know. We're not done. The world has gone quiet. But it's not peace. It's the breath between lightning and thunder. And I'm holding my wand under my pillow again. Waiting. Because he's back. And I'm not the same boy who arrived at Hogwarts 4 years ago. I'm Harry Potter. And I remember. July 28th, 4 summers ago, I was a boy who didn't know magic was real. Now I know death is. I think I'm finally starting to understand what Hogwarts really is. It isn't just a school. It's a mirror. A fortress. A test. And every year, it's shown me something I didn't know I could survive. First, it was the troll. Then the basilisk. Then a soul-sucking wraith. And this year, it was a graveyard. A boy dying beside me. A man coming back from death. And a world that looked away. People will remember the Triwizard Tournament as a tradition. As a story with dragons and mazes and cheering crowds. But I'll remember it as the year Cedric Diggory died with his eyes wide open, and no one wanted to speak his name. The year the Dark Lord returned, and the Ministry tried to call it fiction. The year my name wasn't just pulled from a cup, it was written in prophecy. Even if I don't know what that prophecy says yet, there are still moments from this year that won't leave me. Like the way the maze pulsed beneath my feet, alive with something ancient. Or how Voldemort's wand felt when our spells connected, how it hummed, not with magic, but with recognition. Or the way my mother's ghost held back death for just one more second. That second saved me. That second made me. Ron and Hermione have stayed close all summer. Letters like clockwork. Ron jokes. Hermione analyzes. I feel like they're trying to hold the world steady for me. Sometimes I let them. Sometimes I don't write back. There are things I've seen now I can't describe in ink. Not yet. I keep thinking about what Dumbledore said before I left. Dark times lie ahead. But those who have something worth fighting for never fight alone. I didn't fully understand it then. But I think I will soon. Because something is coming. I can feel it in the silence before sunrise. In the way the Daily Prophet avoids my name. In the way dreams come slower, heavier now. Next year won't be about riddles or mazes or secret chambers. It'll be about truth. And power. And resistance. And I'll be ready. Because I've been broken and rebuilt. Marked. Chosen. Scarred. And I'm still here. July 30th. The sky feels like it's holding its breath. I wish I didn't understand why. The heat is awful. Privet Drive isn't built for this kind of summer. It's like the pavement is sweating. The air doesn't move. And everything smells like cut grass and boredom. I lie in the flower bed sometimes, just under the open window, listening to the news through the Dursleys' telly. Not for weather reports. Not for sports. Just in case they say something weird. A storm that moved in the wrong direction. A cold wind without clouds. A name no one's supposed to remember. But they don't say anything like that. They never do. Ron and Hermione haven't written much. Not since I came back from Hogwarts. Just vague lines. Everything's fine. We can't say much. Trust Dumbledore. It's like they're in on something I'm not. And Dumbledore hasn't contacted me at all. Not a single owl. He saw me through everything last year, Cedric, the graveyard, Voldemort's return, and now he's silent. Everyone is. I'm just here. In this house. Sweating. Waiting. Sometimes I hear things at night. Rustling in the hedges. Whispers under the sound of wind. A fox? A spell? I don't know. I keep my wand under my pillow again. I don't sleep much. Today, I snapped. Dudley and his gang were teasing some little kid down the street. I told him to back off. He laughed. Called me a freak, like he used to when we were younger. But his voice has changed. Deeper now. He's taller than me. He tried to shove me. We nearly got into it. And then, the air went cold. Not cold like the breeze shifted. Cold. Like the sun blinked out. Like something had slipped into the world that didn't belong. I felt it before I saw it. Dementors. 2 of them. Gliding between the houses like smoke. I pulled my wand before I even thought. Expecto Patronum! The stag exploded out of my wand, brilliant and fierce. It drove them off, but not before one got to Dudley. He collapsed. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't speak. He looked broken. I carried him home. A neighbor saw us. A nosy one. And now, I've just received a letter. I'm being expelled from Hogwarts. For using magic in front of a muggle. They're taking everything away from me. Because I did the right thing. Because I survived. Again. Something is wrong. Not just with the ministry. Not just with the sky. Something in the world is shifting. And I don't know who I can trust anymore. But I know this, Voldemort is back. I saw him. And if no one else will say it, I will. August 1st, the sky cracked open tonight. And with it, something in me did too. I was pacing when it happened. Still clutching the ministry's letter in my fist like it might bite again. They said I was expelled. That my wand would be destroyed. That I'd violated the decree. I was ready to leave. Or fight. Or both. Then the sky split with a gust of wind. And they arrived. Witches and wizards in cloaks, on brooms, cutting through the heat like ghosts through fog. "Harry," someone whispered. "We're the advance guard. Don't panic." There were a dozen of them. Moody. Tonks. Kingsley. Lupin. Lupin's face calmed me before his words did. They flew me over the countryside, miles and miles of fields and towns melting into night. The wind cut the heat from my skin. It was the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe again. We landed in London. A quiet square. A line of grimy old houses. Then Tonks tapped her wand. The headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix may be found at number 12, Grimmauld Place. And just like that, a house pulled itself into existence. It was tall, dark, and unfriendly. The windows looked like they'd seen too much. The front door snarled instead of creaking. The hallway smelled like dust and something older. Sirius's house. His childhood home. He greeted me with tired eyes and a hug that lasted longer than I expected. The house breathes, in a way. Paintings scream. A mounted elf's head watches the hallway. There's a portrait of Sirius's mother that shrieks about blood traitors whenever the curtains are pulled. I hate her voice. So does Sirius. He drinks fire whiskey while he curses her memory. I finally saw Ron and Hermione again. They tried to smile. But I wasn't ready. I let them have it, every letter they didn't send, every secret they kept. They tried to explain. I didn't care. I was angry. At them. At Dumbledore. At the world. But I'm here now. And I've learned what the Order of the Phoenix is. A secret group. Fighting Voldemort. Behind the ministry's back. Because the ministry refuses to believe the truth. They're calling me unstable in the papers. The Daily Prophet paints me like a lunatic. But I'm not crazy. I'm just awake. There's talk about a weapon. Something Voldemort wants. Something the Order is guarding. No one will tell me what it is. But I feel like I'm part of something again. Like the silence is over. The world still feels wrong. But for the first time all summer, I don't feel alone in it. August 3rd, the house has too many doors, and all of them close when I get near. Grimmauld Place is the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels suspicious. Every stair creaks, every wall listens. There are dark things sealed in the cabinets, and the curtains move when no one's near them. But it's the people who whisper the most. The Order meets behind closed doors. Dumbledore isn't here, hasn't even sent a word, but they still won't let me in. I'm not allowed to know what they're planning. Not allowed to know what Voldemort is doing. Not even allowed to sit in the room. Just watch from the landing. And listen. I tried. I pressed my ear against the door last night. I heard Mr. Weasley talking about surveillance charms, and Moody grumbling about guarding some secret object. I heard Sirius snap at someone, said I had a right to know more. But then Mrs. Weasley's voice cut through everything. He's not a soldier. He's a child. She meant it kindly. But it stung like a hex. I went upstairs after that. I didn't want anyone to see my face. Not even Ron and Hermione. They were trying so hard to act normal, playing chess, reading magazines, joking about Fred and George's latest prank powders. But I could see it in their eyes. They knew more than me. And they weren't allowed to say. Sirius sat with me later. He told me about the house. How it belonged to his family, pure-blood maniacs who believed muggles were beneath them. His parents disowned him when he was 16. Said he was a disgrace to their name. He lives here now. But he's not free. It's like the walls hate him. Like they remember who he was. He says we're both trapped. Me with the Dursleys. Him in this dusty tomb. Neither of us where we really belong. I asked about the weapon. He wouldn't tell me. Just looked away and said, there are things better left until Dumbledore says otherwise. That name again. Always him. Last night I dreamed about a hallway. Long, cold, with a locked door at the end. I think I've seen it before. But not with my eyes. No one trusts me with the truth. But I feel like it's getting closer. Like it's just behind that locked door. Waiting. August 12th, there's a kind of fear that doesn't feel like panic. It feels like standing at the edge of something final. They tried to ruin me. The Ministry. They changed the time of my hearing. Moved it forward without warning. Tried to make sure I wouldn't show up. But I did. Thanks to Mr. Weasley, who ran with me through the underground like we were escaping something. He didn't say much. But his silence felt like belief. When we got there, I wasn't brought to a room. I was taken to a chamber, an ancient place that smelled like cold stone and judgment. I stood alone. A single chair in the center of a circle of witches and wizards. Cornelius Fudge sat at the head, face like carved frost. The question wasn't did Harry Potter cast a Patronus? It was how do we shut him up? They didn't want to hear about Dementors. They didn't want to know Dudley nearly died. They didn't want to believe Voldemort sent them, or that he's even back at all. They just wanted to make me an example. Strip away my wand. My school. My voice. And then? He entered. Dumbledore. Wearing blue robes like the night sky, eyes unreadable. He didn't look at me. Not once. But he spoke for me. Defended me with facts, law, and silence. Fudge didn't like it. He tried to twist everything, said I should have waited. Said I was reckless. But Dumbledore didn't waver. And in the end, they voted. Cleared of all charges. I didn't feel victory. Just the chill of knowing how close it came. Outside, I tried to thank Dumbledore. He walked past me like I wasn't there. No nod. No warmth. Not even my name. He's keeping his distance on purpose. And I don't know why. That trial wasn't about me. It was about fear. The kind that makes people lie. And silence others who won't. If this is what truth costs in their world, I'm willing to pay it. September 1st, I don't know what I expected Hogwarts to feel like this year. Safe? Familiar? It doesn't. It feels uncertain. Like the castle is waiting to see what I'll do. The train ride started with whispers. People stared. Some looked away when I met their eyes. Others didn't bother to hide it, like I was a wild creature in a cage they were hoping would snap. Seamus didn't even pretend. He said his mum didn't believe me. Said I was making it up about Cedric, about Voldemort, about everything. I almost lost it. But Ron stood up, eyes blazing. I didn't say much after that. Just sat back and stared out the window. The compartments felt smaller this year. Maybe because so many friends now feel like strangers. Except for Luna Lovegood. She sat with us, wearing radish earrings and reading the Quibbler upside down. She didn't flinch when I said Voldemort's name. She just nodded and said, He'll want your mind, you know. That's how they work, those who fear the sun. I didn't ask what she meant, but I remembered it. When we arrived, the sky over the castle was bruised purple and gold. I looked for the carriages, but there were no horses this time. Just creatures. Thestrals. Winged, skeletal things with eyes like glass and breath like frost. I asked Ron if he saw them. He didn't. But Luna did. You can only see them after you've seen death, she said softly. The castle hasn't changed. But I have. The Great Hall feels colder. The Sorting Hat sang about division, not bravery. It warned us. Said Hogwarts must stand together or fall apart. And I think I believe it. There's a new defense against the dark arts teacher. Professor Umbridge. She wears all pink and smiles like a porcelain doll. But her eyes are calculating. Her voice is sugary, false, like it was brewed in a ministry cauldron. She stood up during Dumbledore's speech. Interrupted him. Gave a little speech of her own. About progress. About order. About standing together under proper leadership. No one applauded when she sat down. But the message was clear. She's not here to teach. She's here to control. This year isn't going to be about exams or house cups. It's going to be about truth. And the price of telling it. September 10th, you don't always notice when a shadow spreads. Sometimes it looks like lace. Smells like tea. Smiles like a toad. Umbridge. Her classroom smells like dried flowers and chalk. The walls are covered in kitten plates, charmed, mewing softly. It should feel gentle. It doesn't. It feels like a cage. We opened our books expecting curses, counter-curses, anything useful. But no. She gave us theory. No spells. No wands. You are not to use magic in this class, she said with a smile that never touched her eyes. There is nothing to be afraid of if you behave. I raised my hand. I asked, calmly, why we weren't being taught real defense. Why we weren't preparing for danger, because danger is real. Because Voldemort is back. Her smile widened. You've been misinformed. She gave me detention. That night. Her office is pinker than her classroom. Lace curtains. Doilies. The same purring kittens on decorative plates. But when the door closes, it's like the room exhales, something slow and patient and cruel. She gave me a quill. No ink. You'll write, I must not tell lies. I didn't understand. Until I wrote it. And the words carved into the back of my hand. Blood ink. No spell. No sound. Just pain, sharp and quiet. She watched. And sipped her tea. I don't know how long I sat there. Just writing the same line, over and over, as the cut deepened and healed and cut again. She never raised her voice. Never lost her smile. It was worse than shouting. I didn't tell anyone. Not Ron. Not Hermione. Not McGonagall. I don't want to give her the satisfaction. I don't want to seem weak. I've seen worse pain. But not like this. Not like something wearing a smile while it draws blood. Umbridge isn't a teacher. She's something else. A censor. A spy. A soft-voiced enforcer of silence. And she's not just here for the class. She's here for me. September 16th, Hogwarts used to breathe. You could feel it in the stairs, the portraits, even the wind off the lake. Now it holds its breath. Waiting. Watching. Umbridge is growing roots. She's been named Hogwarts High Inquisitor, a title that sounds like it belongs in some ministry archive, not inside these walls. But with it comes power. Real power. She started observing teachers, sitting at the back of their classrooms with her clipboard and sugar-sweet smile, nodding along and making notes like she's judging a flower show. Except the flowers are people, and the prize is their silence. She watched McGonagall's Transfiguration class yesterday. Didn't say a word. Just scribbled. But McGonagall didn't flinch. She stood straighter, sharper. Her voice didn't even tremble. When the bell rang, she looked Umbridge dead in the eye and said, "If you have any questions about my teaching, I suggest you consult the results of my students." Then she turned and left. Hagrid still hasn't come back. His cabin's dark. The pumpkins are overgrown. Fang howls sometimes at nothing. Rumors are everywhere. Some say he's been sacked, others say he was sent to speak with giants. No one tells us anything. And that silence is spreading. The halls feel narrower lately. There are new rules posted every day, bright pink parchment tacked onto every bulletin board. No groups larger than 3 may congregate without prior approval. No unauthorized reading materials. No disruptive behavior, including discussions of unsanctioned topics. Unsanctioned topics. That's what truth is now. People are scared to talk in the common room. Some even check the corners before whispering. Even the ghosts seem quieter. I catch the other students staring at me more now. Some with sympathy. Some with suspicion. A few with admiration. No. Okay, tired. Not in the physical way, but in that too long in a small room kind of way. Like the walls of number 12 Grimmauld Place were weighing on him the same way Umbridge is weighing on us. We told him about the blood quill. About the new rules. The whispered fear. How Dumbledore still won't speak to me. Sirius clenched his jaw but didn't interrupt. And then he said something I haven't stopped thinking about since. They're not trying to teach you. They're trying to break you. But they've forgotten something important, Harry. You've already survived worse. We asked him about the order. About the weapon. He wouldn't say much. Just that Voldemort is trying to rebuild, gain information, power, followers. He said the Ministry is more afraid of Dumbledore than of Voldemort. Because Dumbledore represents change. Truth. Rebellion. Uncontrolled magic. I asked him if I'm being kept in the dark on purpose. He didn't answer directly. Just said, "You're not a child anymore, Harry. But the people who love you still see the boy in the cupboard." Then he added, "Don't let them decide who you are." I didn't realize how much I missed him. Not just him, but the idea of him. Someone whose blood and fire still run like mine. Who's not afraid to stand against something just because it's big. Sirius is reckless. But he's real. When the fire winked out, the room felt colder than before. But I also felt steadier. Like I'd touched something important. Even if just for a minute. They're watching me here. But I'm watching them too. And I'm not the only one getting ready. October 10th, there's something beneath the surface. Something no one will name. But I can feel it. Like a storm building behind a locked door. They keep talking about a weapon. Not to me, of course. I hear it in fragments. Whispers behind closing doors. Mad Eye mentioning it at Grimmauld Place. Kingsley muttering something about the department. Mrs. Weasley changing the subject every time I walk in. Something Voldemort wants. Something the Order is guarding. And no one will tell me what it is. Not even Sirius. It's like being back in the cupboard again. Everyone out there making decisions. Telling you what's good for you. While you sit in the dark, trying not to break. But something's shifted at school too. Jo. She's different around me now. We talked after charms yesterday. Just the two of us, walking slowly down the corridor near the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy. She said she believed me. About Cedric. About Voldemort. Her voice cracked when she said Cedric's name. Mine did too. She asked how I keep going. I didn't have an answer. I told her I don't think I do. I just don't stop. Sometimes we sit near each other in the library now. Or end up beside one another at breakfast. She doesn't talk much. Neither do I. But the silence feels like understanding. Back in the common room, Hermione's eyes are sharper than usual. She says we need to prepare. The Ministry's rewriting truth, and Umbridge is censoring everything. The Daily Prophet still calls me unstable. Still paints Dumbledore like a madman. And defense against the dark arts is still nothing but theory and ink. We're being left exposed. She's right. We can't trust them to teach us how to fight. So we'll have to teach ourselves. Something is coming. And I don't want to be helpless when it does. October 17th, I didn't mean to become a teacher. I just wanted to stop feeling powerless. But maybe that's where change always begins. It started in the back room of the Hog's Head, curtains drawn, windows streaked, the air thick with smoke and spilled secrets. Hermione had arranged everything. She wrote the list. Found the place. Dragged us all to that crooked old pub like she already knew this would matter. And somehow it did. There were more students than I expected. All of them crowded around sticky tables. All of them looking at me. Like I had answers. Like I was someone who could lead. I told them the truth. About Voldemort. About Cedric. About how the Ministry is lying. How Umbridge is keeping us weak on purpose. I didn't try to sound heroic. I just told them what it felt like to stand alone in that graveyard, wand shaking, breath short, death just steps away. I said if they wanted to fight back, I'd show them how. They believed me. Every single one of them. We called it Dumbledore's Army. A name she'd hate. A name that felt like rebellion in our mouths. And then, just when we needed it most, the castle gave us something unexpected. The Room of Requirement. It appeared like a secret remembered. A door where there wasn't one. A space that changed to fit what we needed. Stone floors, soft lighting, cushions, books, even a dueling dummy. It felt alive. Like it had been waiting. The first lesson was simple, disarming charms. Expelliarmus, I said. Like this. Like you mean it. They watched me. Then tried it themselves. Some were clumsy. Some were quick. Neville's wand backfired once and nearly singed Seamus's eyebrows. But no one gave up. By the end of the session, something had changed in the air. It wasn't just practice. It was belief. They weren't looking at me like a freak anymore. They were looking at me like maybe I was someone who could make a difference. I don't know if I am. But I want to try. December 18th, magic isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it happens in a moment you never expected. We've been training for weeks now. Every time the room appears, it's better, smarter. It seems to learn with us. The cushions shift closer, the walls adjust for spell echoes, the lighting dims when we're tired. It's more than a room. It's a sanctuary. Everyone's improving. Neville, he can disarm now without dropping his own wand. Ginny's hexes are fast, sharp, like she's been waiting her whole life to let them fly. Even Luna moves like she's dancing with her magic. They're becoming a force. And I think I'm starting to believe in the idea of us. Umbridge, meanwhile, has doubled the rules. She's sniffing out secrets like a bloodhound in lace. There's a new decree posted every morning, no clubs, no gatherings, no secret meetings. But still, we meet. Still, we fight. Yesterday, after training, Cho stayed behind. Everyone else had left. Just her and me. The air smelled faintly of dust and pine from the enchanted Christmas garland that had appeared across the walls. She said she was glad we were doing this. Said she admired me. And then she leaned in. Her lips were soft, warm. Just a kiss. But it felt like everything in my chest turned over. Afterward, we didn't say much. She smiled, blushed, tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. Then she left. And I just stood there, heart beating like a drum, wand still warm in my hand. In the corridor later, Umbridge caught me. No room. No DA. Just me, walking too late, books under my arm. She smiled that awful smile. And handed me another detention slip. Another evening with her quill. Another message carved into my skin. I must not tell lies. But I've stopped flinching. I think that frightens her more than if I screamed. The DA is growing. So is her fear. And somewhere between that kiss and the sting of her curse, I've decided something. We are not done. January 15th, trust doesn't break like glass. It frays. Softly. Until the silence underneath is louder than the words that came before. It happened fast. One day, the room of requirement was warm and alive, full of sparks, laughter, real magic. The next, it was gone. Not just locked. Vanished. We met for the last time just after the new year. Cho had been quiet. I thought it was about the kiss. But now I wonder if it was something else. They came for us the next day. Umbridge and her inquisitorial squad. She'd found out. Someone had told her. They dragged me into her office. Cat plates purring all around, fire crackling low, like it was enjoying the show. She didn't shout. She smiled. Said the DA had been an illegal organization. Said I was its ringleader. And then she unrolled a parchment. With my name at the top. And underneath it, the signature that gave us away. 𝒍𝒆𝒆𝒑. Cho's friend. She'd gone to Umbridge. Told her everything. I felt the betrayal before I understood it. Like the floor had shifted under me. Dumbledore arrived before they could expel me. Before they could snap my wand. He read the parchment. Paused. And then he did something I'll never forget. He said he'd organized the DA. Took full responsibility. They tried to arrest him. Wands drawn. Ministry officials everywhere. But Dumbledore, he didn't flinch. You seem to be laboring under the delusion that I'm going to come quietly, he said, eyes twinkling just once. And then he was gone. Disapparated right from under them. Like smoke. He left me behind. But he saved me. Again. They didn't expel me. Didn't break my wand. But Umbridge is headmistress now. The DA is over. The room is silent. And Hogwarts feels smaller. I saw Cho again in the corridor today. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something. I walked past her. I couldn't do it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm tired of being a name on a list. Of being the reason people get hurt. But I'm not done fighting. Not while they still hold this place in fear. Not while he is still out there. February 3rd, not all the monsters live in the Forbidden Forest. Some walk the corridors. Some sit behind desks in pink cardigans. And some come home with stories written in bruises. Hagrid's back. He showed up in the middle of the night, limping, battered, face half shadowed by a beard that looks like it's been through a war. And maybe it has. He wouldn't talk at first. Just muttered something about business for Dumbledore, and how he'd been out east. But the truth came out, little by little. In pauses. In flinches. In how he kept touching the scar on his shoulder like it was still hot. He'd gone to speak with the giants. Him and Madame Maxim, trekking through mountain ranges, Cold nights, whispers of Voldemort's followers trying to recruit them. Said he tried to reason with them. Tried to show that not all wizards feared their kind. But the giants didn't listen. Some had already chosen sides. Others didn't care. One night, he and Maxim were nearly killed. He didn't say it like a boast. Just a fact. Something that happened. And when I looked at him, really looked, I realized something awful. He's been carrying this silence alone for months. The bruises are fading now. But Umbridge has her eyes on him. She started at inspections. Follows him during lessons, scribbling in that vile little clipboard. She watched him try to teach us about thestrals, and when one of them spooked a Slytherin, she scribbled faster. Said he was unfit for instruction. He's trying so hard. He wants to stay. Wants to protect us. But I think he knows it's only a matter of time. He's not the only one being watched. Umbridge is everywhere now. Corridors. Classrooms. Common rooms. The walls feel like they have ears. The portraits pretend not to listen, but I see the way their eyes flicker. I don't know how much longer we can take this. But I do know this. Hagrid deserves better. We all do. February 10th, I didn't know your mind could bleed. That thoughts could bruise like skin. That someone could step into your head and leave footprints. Dumbledore still won't talk to me. Still won't look at me. But he sent Snape to teach me occlumency. Mind defense. A way to keep Voldemort out of my head, out of my dreams. Because the connection is growing. The dreams are sharper now. I can feel what he feels. See what he sees. Sometimes I wake up gasping, with the cold stink of his thoughts still clinging to me. It's not just fear anymore. It's hunger. Snape's lessons are worse than I imagined. He doesn't explain. He commands. Clear your mind. As if it's that simple. As if I can just push everything down, or the whispers, the pressure, the ache behind my scar, and make it vanish. He casts legilimens, and it's like drowning. My thoughts come rushing forward, Cedric's eyes, blank and lifeless. My mum screaming. The graveyard. The Dursleys. Sirius, laughing. Cho, crying. All of it. Torn open. And Snape sees it. He doesn't say much after. Just sneers, and tells me again how weak my defenses are. But I see something in his eyes. Something cold. And something else I don't understand. I hate it. Not just the intrusion. The feeling that someone else controls what I remember. That Voldemort might one day use my own mind like a doorway. That maybe he already has. I want to get better. But how do you defend a place that's already been broken into? I'm trying. Every night I lie awake, whispering to myself. Clear your mind. But thoughts aren't like spells. They don't obey. December 24th, there are places where magic can't fix things. Where wands are quiet and time just waits. I walked through one today. It was full of ghosts who still breathe. We went to visit Mr. Weasley at St. Mungo's. After the snake. After the dream I had, or whatever it was. I saw it, through its eyes. The flicker of torches. The hiss of fangs. The sound of blood dripping on cold stone. He should have died. But he didn't. Mrs. Weasley said it was thanks to me. Because I saw it happen. Because I told them in time. But I don't feel heroic. I feel haunted. The hospital doesn't look like magic. It looks like hope, barely held together. Peeling wallpaper. Tea that tastes like spells gone stale. Quiet, except for coughs and whispers and people pretending not to cry. We passed a man who kept coughing up slugs. And another who laughed at nothing, rocking in his chair, fingers twisting at invisible threads. I didn't want to stare. But I did. Because I had to understand something. What happens when you don't come back? On the 4th floor, we saw them. Neville was already there, with his gran, standing beside a pair of beds. The 2 people lying in them, motionless, eyes open but blank, were his mum and dad. The Longbottoms. Auras. Tortured by Death Eaters until their minds shattered like glass. Neville didn't say much. He didn't cry. Just stood there with a wrapper in his hand, Drooble's best blowing gum, and carefully tucked it into his mum's palm. She didn't react. But he smiled. Just a little. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to feel. Just that something inside me shifted. That Neville carries more than anyone sees. And that this war, this silent, creeping war, is older than we are. We left in the snow. My scar was quiet. But my heart wasn't. I saw what Voldemort leaves behind. And what kind of world he wants. And I know now, we can't let it happen. March 5th, some voices echo even when they go silent. And when they speak again, it's like hearing thunder roll after weeks of holding your breath. Dumbledore looked at me today. Really looked. It's been months since he did that. Since the trial. Since the whispers. Since the world started shifting and cracking beneath my feet. I used to think his silence was protection. Then I thought it was punishment. Now, I'm not sure what to think. I was in his office. Fawkes let out a low, musical cry from his perch above the fire. The air smelled like dust, like candle smoke, like the moment before a spell is cast. And Dumbledore finally spoke. He said he hadn't looked at me because he was afraid. Not of me. Of what I carried. Of Voldemort and the connection between us. He told me things. Terrible things. That Voldemort tried to possess me at the Ministry. That love, the thing he always said protected me, was the only force strong enough to push him out. And that Voldemort may be seeking something deeper than power. Immortality. Then Dumbledore said this. I care too much about you, Harry. I cared more than I should. And that has made me blind. He's never said anything like that to me before. Not once. I wanted to shout. To ask him why he didn't speak sooner. Why he left me alone in the dark. But I didn't. Because I think I saw something in him I hadn't seen before. Something fragile. Something human. Before I left, I asked one question. What does Voldemort want? He didn't answer. Not really. Just looked at the window, where snow was falling against the glass, and said softly. He wants what he lost long ago. And what he can never truly have. I don't know what that means. Not yet. But I think I will. Soon. April 2nd, the Forbidden Forest doesn't hum anymore. It holds its breath. As if something new has taken root, something too big to belong, and too strange to ignore. Hagrid took us deep into the woods today. Me and Hermione. Said he had to show us something. Wouldn't say what. Only that it was important. That it was family. The deeper we walked, the quieter the world became. Even the centaurs wouldn't come near us. They watched from the trees, silent, golden-eyed, full of judgment. And Hagrid kept walking. He brought us to a clearing wrapped in shadows. And there, half hidden behind thick trunks and torn branches, was a giant. Slumped. Breathing. Half asleep. His head was massive, like a boulder with eyes. His hands were the size of tree roots. And when Hagrid said his name, he stirred. Grawpy. Hagrid's half-brother. He found him in the mountains while he was away. Brought him back. Hidden him here. Tied him to trees with ropes enchanted and reinforced a dozen times over. He wants to civilize him. Teach him words. Teach him to stay. But Grawp doesn't understand. Not fully. He swipes, grunts, roars when he's frustrated. He almost hit Hermione. And yet, Hagrid looks at him like he's a lost piece of himself. He asked us, begged us, to look after Grawp if he's sacked. Said he might not be around much longer. Said Grawp would need a friendly face. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him this was mad. But Hagrid looked small. Not in size. In worry. In hope. So we said yes. And now I keep thinking. How many people in this world are too big to belong? Too strange to be accepted? And how many of them just need someone to stay? I don't know how we'll keep Grawp hidden. But I know this. We owe Hagrid more than we can say. June 15th, it wasn't a dream. It felt like falling into someone else's skin. And when I woke up, I couldn't breathe for the fear that it was already too late. It started with a hallway. Long, endless. Lined with doors that pulsed with cold magic. And I knew it. I've seen it before, in dreams that weren't dreams, in flashes that feel like memories Voldemort left be. And how it felt. But Hermione saved us. She lied. Said we were hiding a weapon in the Forbidden Forest. And Umbridge believed her. Of course she did. Her hatred makes her stupid. We led her to Grawp. To the centaurs. To justice. She's gone now. Carried off screaming into the trees. Don't know if she'll come back. Don't care. But Sirius is still in danger. And the Ministry won't help. Dumbledore is still missing. And we're alone. So we're going. Me. Ron. Hermione. Ginny. Neville. Luna. 6 students. Marching into the heart of the Ministry. To save the only family I've got left. I don't know if we'll make it back. But I have to try. June 17th, it felt like walking into a memory I didn't know I had. A place built from silence and riddles. Where time hums wrong, and the walls seem to breathe. We broke into the Ministry of Magic. No plan. No backup. Just 6 of us, under the invisibility cloak, slipping past night security on the back of Thestrals, wings slicing the dark over London. It should have felt mad. It did. But it also felt right. Because Sirius needed us. Because no one else was coming. The Department of Mysteries isn't like any other place I've ever seen. It's a maze of doors. Cold, shifting corridors that loop and twist like thoughts you've tried to forget. Each room was stranger than the last. A room where time turned inside out, where a shattered time turner spilled seconds like sand. A room of swirling brains in glass jars, thoughts floating in pink mist. A room full of whispering orbs. We found it. The Hall of Prophecies. Row after row of fragile glass globes, each glowing faintly with the weight of what they held. And then we saw it. My name. On a prophecy. Tucked among hundreds. Dusty. Waiting. I picked it up. And the room seemed to breathe. That's when they came. The Death Eaters. Dozens of them. Black-robed. Smiling. Led by Lucius Malfoy. He said I'd been lured there. That Sirius wasn't even at the Ministry. That the vision was a trick. It was a trap. And I walked straight into it. They wanted the prophecy. Said only I could remove it. Said it would explain everything. But I didn't care about that anymore. I cared about getting out. We fought. Wands drawn, spells fired, shells shattering, glass flying like rain. Neville, brave as I've ever seen him, stood his ground with a broken nose and blood on his robes. Luna dodged hexes with dreamlike calm. Ginny's ankle twisted, Hermione knocked cold, Ron laughing strangely under a Confundus charm. We were losing. Until the order arrived. Tonks. Kingsley. Moody. Sirius. He was there. He was alive. For a moment, I thought we'd made it. For a moment, I thought the worst was over. But then, Bellatrix. A flash of red light. A shout. A fall. Sirius went through the veil. That arch. That whispering stone veil that doesn't echo. He didn't scream. He vanished. Gone. Just like that. I ran to it. Called his name. Shouted. Begged. But there was no reply. Only the flutter of fabric. And the cold. He's gone. And I don't know if I'll ever feel whole again. June 18th, I thought grief would feel like drowning. But it feels more like burning. A fire that starts behind your ribs and never goes out. Sirius is gone. I keep saying it in my head, hoping it will change the way it feels. It doesn't. He fell through the veil. No body. No final words. Just a curtain that swayed once and stilled. Like he was never there at all. I chased Bellatrix. Through the ministry's ruins. Through the echo of collapsing shelves and broken glass. I wanted to hurt her. More than I've ever wanted anything. I caught her. Cornered her. My wand in my hand, my chest hollow with rage. She taunted me. Laughed. Said I couldn't do it. Said I didn't have it in me to cast the Cruciator's curse like she had. So I tried. The spell burst from my wand, wild, red, furious. She screamed. But only for a moment. She said it had to come from hate. Real hate. And mine was tangled with grief. Then he came. Voldemort. He appeared like smoke coalescing into form. Eyes red. Voice cold. And suddenly it wasn't just rage anymore. It was fear. He raised his wand. Spoke my name like it was already written on a tombstone. But I didn't run. I stood there, wand shaking, heart splintered, ready to die if it meant taking him with me. And then, Dumbledore arrived. He was fury and flame. Silent spells, blinding light, the floor cracking beneath them as they dueled across the hall. Old magic. Deeper than words. I've never seen anything like it. But Voldemort didn't win. He vanished before the auras arrived, his face twisted in rage and something else, fear. Real fear. For Dumbledore. For the first time in a year, the Ministry saw the truth. Saw Voldemort with their own eyes. No more lies. No more pretending. The war has begun. Fudge looked pale when he saw him. As if he realized how many lives his denial had already cost. But none of it matters to me right now. Because Sirius is still gone. And all I can feel is the fire he left behind. June 20th, I always thought the worst thing would be not knowing. But knowing, that's heavier. Like someone placed a weight on my chest and whispered, "This is who you are now." I asked Dumbledore. After the Ministry. After the fighting. After Sirius. I asked him why. Why Voldemort came after me. Why I could feel him in my dreams. Why everything, Cedric, the prophecy, the pain, the loss, why it always came back to me. And he told me. Everything. There was a prophecy. It was the one I held in my hands before it shattered in the Department of Mysteries. But Dumbledore had heard it long ago. Before I was born. It said that a child would be born as the 7th month dies. That he would have the power to defeat the Dark Lord. That neither can live while the other survives. It could have been someone else. Neville. His birthday is close enough. But Voldemort chose me. He marked me as his equal. That's why he came for my parents. That's why I've never had a choice. The scar isn't just a scar. It's a connection. A thread between our minds, our magic, maybe even our souls. And that thread is part of the prophecy. The part Voldemort never knew. Either he kills me, or I kill him. There it is. No more guessing. No more wondering if I'm just a pawn or a mistake. I'm the one. Not the chosen one by fate. Chosen by Voldemort's fear. Dumbledore said he didn't tell me before because he wanted to protect me. That love protected me. That I wasn't ready. Maybe I'm still not. But I deserve to know what I'm walking into. And now I do. I don't feel brave. I feel tired. But there's something else beneath the ache. Not anger. Not sadness. Just this, quiet. Like the ground before a storm. I'm going home soon. Back to Privet Drive. Back to the cupboard under the stairs in my memory. But I'll be different this time. Because I know now. The war is mine, too. June 23rd, every year, the train takes me back. But it never brings me to the same place. Not really. Because every time, I'm not the same person who boarded it. King's Cross. The platform still smells like steam and sweets and too many hugs all at once. But this time, it feels like I'm standing just outside the memory of it all. The laughter feels distant. The sunlight too soft. Like I'm walking through a memory that doesn't quite belong to me anymore. Ron and Hermione sat beside me the whole ride. Ron kept tossing a chocolate frog in the air and missing it on purpose, like he was trying to make me smile. Hermione pretended to read. But I saw her watching me from the corner of her eye, her mouth tied with worry. They mean well. But I needed silence. And the window gave it to me. Outside, the countryside rolled past like it always does, green and gold, stitched with hedges and drifting clouds. But this time, I kept thinking of that veil. How the curtain fluttered. How Sirius disappeared without a sound. And I keep wondering. If I'd moved faster, thought smarter, cast stronger, maybe he'd still be here. I didn't tell Ron and Hermione what the prophecy said. Not yet. Not today. I'll carry that weight a little longer. Because once I say it out loud, I'll never be able to take it back. Luna stopped by. She looked around like she was seeing a different train than the one we were on. Said something odd about Thestrals and how death isn't an end, it's just another room we haven't seen yet. Then she smiled and offered me a copy of the Quibbler. I took it. And weirdly, I felt better. The train slowed. The station rose into view. And the summer air hit me like a whisper of the world outside Hogwarts. The one I keep forgetting still exists. Tonks was there, waiting to escort us. Her hair was bright pink again, like a flame burning in the fog. And the Dursleys stood off to the side, arms crossed, eyes sharp, already angry without words. I turned back for one last look at the train. And for a second, I thought I saw Sirius. Standing beside the window. Smirking. Fading. I blinked. He was gone. I'm not ready for summer. For silence. For pretending I'm normal. But I'll go. Because I must. Because the war has begun. And I need to be ready. July 3rd, some houses don't creak when they're old. They sigh. And when you listen closely, you can hear the lives that used to move through the walls. I'm at 12, Grimmauld Place now. They didn't send me straight back to the Dursleys. Said I needed rest. Said it wasn't safe. But I think they just didn't want me to be alone. Not yet. The house is cold. Even in summer. The air feels like it's been holding its breath since Sirius vanished. His room is just as he left it. Posters of Muggle motorcycles. Burnt bits of old family photos. The curtains drawn too tightly. A trunk half-packed and still open. I haven't gone in. Not really. Just stood in the doorway, once or twice, watching the dust hang like mist in the light. Mrs. Black still screams from her portrait, even more now. Creature mutters from the shadows, scurrying past rooms that feel more like mausoleums. No one speaks of Sirius out loud. But everything is him. The teacup left on the shelf. The coat still by the door. The laugh that still echoes in the stairwell when it's quiet. I can't stop replaying it. The duel. The veil. The way he looked at me just before, like he still had something to say. And then, nothing. I know Dumbledore said he's gone. I know what I saw. But sometimes, when I walk down the hall, I expect him to step out from the kitchen and ruffle my hair, call me kid, and grin that mad grin of his. He doesn't. Lupin's been staying nearby. He checks in without saying much. Just a cup of tea. A glance. A hand on my shoulder. It's enough. Ron and Hermione write every few days. They're at the Burrow, trying to get everything ready for school again. But nothing feels ready. Not the world. Not me. There's a silence here that wraps around my thoughts. And inside it, I keep hearing the prophecy. Neither can live while the other survives. This house used to belong to the Black family. Now it belongs to the war. And to me, I suppose. But it doesn't feel like mine. It feels like a chapter Sirius never got to finish. Sometimes, I sit in the hallway, close my eyes, and whisper to the dark. Tell me what to do. The dark never answers. But the silence keeps me company. July 12th, the sky's been restless. Clouds like bruises, wind that changes direction halfway through a breath. Something's coming. The owls know it too. They started arriving 3 days ago. One by one. Feathers slick with rain. Tired eyes. Urgent parchment sealed in wax. The first letter was from Ron. He says his dad's doing better. Back at the ministry, though better there seems to mean pretending things are normal while preparing for the worst. He mentioned Percy. Still won't speak to them. Still choosing the ministry over his own family. Ron tried to make it sound like a joke. But I could feel the ache beneath the ink. Hermione's letter was longer. Told me she's been reading about the Fidelius charm again. That she found a reference to the veil in a book older than Hogwarts. She didn't say much else, just that she believes me. Believes that maybe, just maybe, Sirius isn't entirely gone. Not yet. I didn't know how much I needed someone to say that. Luna sent a drawing. It's me. Riding a thestral through clouds shaped like lion heads and moons and shoes. It's labeled Harry Potter, Seeker of Secrets. She spelled seeker wrong. I kept it. The final letter was unsigned. Just a single line in tiny handwriting. The Storm's eye is shifting. He watches the department still. No owl waited behind. No clue who sent it. But I know what it means. The Department of Mysteries. The prophecy. That hall of orbs and whispers. I've been looking out the window more. Watching the clouds twist over London like threads in a giant hand. Thunder in the distance, but no rain yet. Just waiting. There's a kind of silence that feels like a held breath. And this summer feels like that. Like the world is waiting for someone to speak a name that will start it all again. I'm trying to rest. Trying to sleep. But every time I close my eyes, I hear a veil flutter. July 31st, I turned 15 today. Funny how birthdays stop feeling like celebrations and start feeling like checkpoints. Like mile markers in a storm. I sat up late tonight. Just me and this old notebook, the candle flickering like it's trying not to be seen. Hedwig's asleep. Creatures muttering somewhere. The house is still. And for the first time in weeks, my hands aren't shaking when I pick up my quill. It's been a year of secrets. Of silence. Of watching the world shift underneath my feet while I pretended I could still stand tall on it. I think about the boy who got off the train last September. The one who still hoped for a letter from Sirius every other morning. The one who thought Dumbledore had abandoned him. The one who thought pain was the worst thing he'd feel this year. He didn't know yet that pain wasn't the enemy. Loss was. Sirius is gone. That truth doesn't sting any less when I write it. But it's different now. Like I've begun carrying it instead of just standing in its shadow. I know why Voldemort wants me gone. I know what the prophecy means. But I also know this. I am not alone. Ron. Hermione. Neville. Luna. Ginny. They stood with me when no one else would. Fought beside me. Bled beside me. And they're still here. I'm not Dumbledore. Not some destined savior. I'm just a boy with a scar. A wand. And a name Voldemort can't speak without fear curling at the edges of it. Summer is quiet now. But it won't last. The Daily Prophet has started printing the truth again. Fudge is stepping down. And Dumbledore's face is back on the front page, not as a warning, but as a leader. The Order is growing. The castle will be watched more closely than ever. And somewhere out there, he's watching too. The war has begun. And if I have to fight, if I'm meant to fall, then I want my wand in my hand, my friends beside me, and Sirius's laugh echoing in my memory. There's still one more prophecy, I think. The one I write myself. It begins like this. I am Harry Potter. And I will not run. August 1st, there's something different about the air this summer. Not just warmer, sharper. Like it's waiting. Like everything's holding its breath. Dumbledore came for me at dusk. He didn't wait at the door like last time. No arguments with the Dursleys, no long speeches. Just a low knock, a quiet voice, and the smell of lemon drops in the hall. He looked older. Not just the usual kind of old, but tired in the bones. His hand, blackened, ruined, half hidden beneath his sleeve. I didn't ask. He didn't explain. But I noticed. We didn't go to the burrow. Not right away. Instead, he took me somewhere unfamiliar, shabby, quiet, too normal. We were visiting a man named Horace Slughorn. A name I barely remembered from a chocolate frog card. The house was wrecked when we arrived, upturned chairs, blood on the wall, a smear of something that looked like magic gone wrong. But it was a trick. Slughorn had faked it. He was hiding in plain sight, transfigured into an armchair. It would have been funny if it hadn't felt so necessary. Even former professors are afraid now. He's coming back to Hogwarts. Dumbledore wants him to teach again. I'm not sure why, but it's clear it's important. Slughorn collects students the way people collect stamps. He remembers names, favors, bloodlines. He remembered my mum. Said she was one of his favorites. Kind. Brilliant. Powerful in her own way. He looked at me like I was a photo of someone he used to admire. I think he agreed to return because of her. Not me. When we finally arrived at the burrow, it was already dark. Mrs. Weasley hugged me like I'd just come home from war. Fred and George offered jokes instead of grief. Ginny smiled, half fire, half moonlight. And Ron. Ron was just Ron. My best mate. Still. Hermione showed up the next morning with books under her arm and worry in her eyes. They didn't ask too many questions. Not about Sirius. Not about the prophecy. I think they knew the answers would still hurt too much. I've been sleeping in Ron's room. But some nights I just lie awake, listening to the clock on the landing tick off the hours we're not getting back. Sirius is still gone. That truth doesn't feel newer, just heavier. But I'm starting to notice something else. Voldemort's name in the papers, attacks too close to home, disappearances no one can explain. He's not hiding anymore. And Dumbledore's moving, fast. Something's coming. And this time, I don't think Hogwarts will be enough to stop it. August 10th. Not all promises are spoken out loud. Some live in silence. Others, like this one, burn their shape into the world so deeply they can't be undone. Snape made a vow. That's what I heard from inside the hallway, eavesdropping again, ear pressed to the door of a world I'm never quite allowed into. Narcissa Malfoy came to him in the dark. Her sister, Bellatrix, followed close behind like a shadow that could kill. They wore cloaks thick enough to strangle the moonlight, and voices twisted from fear and pride. Narcissa begged. Bellatrix doubted. Snape agreed. They called it an unbreakable vow. I'd only read about it once, in a footnote. Magic that seals a promise in blood and light and death. GE have opened their shop, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, and it's brilliant. Exploding candies. Daydream charms. A joke for every nightmare. But even their windows are warded now. This year, everything feels different before it even begins. The map looks the same. The castle waits. But I feel the shift. In the silence. In the choices people are making. In the promises sealed in fire. September 1st, there's something strange about coming back to school when the world feels like it's falling apart. Everything looks the same, but your eyes don't trust it anymore. The Hogwarts Express pulled away from the station like it always does, slow at first, then gathering steam until London was a memory pressed behind glass. But even that felt different. There were more auras at King's Cross this time. More eyes. More ones hidden beneath coats. Mum's clock at the Burrow doesn't even have the safe on it anymore. Just travelling, home, and mortal peril. We took our usual compartment. Ron filled it with snacks he didn't want to share. Hermione kept rearranging the new books she already read twice. And I kept glancing out the window, pretending I wasn't listening for danger in the sound of the wheels. That's when Slughorn visited. He peeked in with his round glasses and walrus mustache, all smiles and good cheer, like he hadn't spent the last year hiding from the world. He remembered my name before I even said it. Didn't say a Harry Potter. He said Lily's boy. He invited me to join something he calls the Slug Club, the handpicked group of students he thinks are promising. I didn't want to go. But Hermione elbowed me hard and whispered that it might be smart to say yes. That Slughorn knows things. Things about the past. Things about Tom Riddle. So I went. The compartment was full of polished names and smooth voices, children of famous authors, ministry officials, Quidditch stars. Slughorn smiled and asked me about the Triwizard Tournament like it was some glorious sport instead of something that nearly killed me and got Cedric murdered. I didn't say much. But I watched. Slughorn collects people. That's what Hermione says. He builds a web of connections, favors, memories, he trades in potential. It's not evil. But it's not harmless either. He knew my mum. Talked about how clever she was. How good she was at potions. How he always thought she should have been in Slytherin. The way he spoke about her, it made something in me ache. Like hearing someone describe a dream you barely remember, but know you once loved. I don't know if I trust him. But I can feel that he matters. Somewhere in this tangled mess, Horace Slughorn is a thread that leads somewhere dark. And Dumbledore wants me to follow it. So I will. September 5th, some places smell like they remember too much. Spinner's End is one of those places. Even the air there clings like cobwebs. I didn't visit it, not physically. But Dumbledore showed it to me. In a memory, silvery and slow, pulled from his mind like silk. He's been taking me into the pensive, showing me bits of Voldemort's past. Or Tom Riddle's, really. That's the part that makes my skin crawl. Knowing he had a name once. A bed. A childhood. That he wasn't born a monster. Spinner's End was where Snape lived as a boy. Grey Street. Smokestacks. A house that looked more like a bruise than a home. He was quiet. Watching. Always watching. Even back then, his clothes didn't fit. He spoke like he was measuring every word before letting it escape. That's where he met Lily. My mum. She was young, freckled, bright, already burning with magic she didn't understand. She made a flower bloom just by touching it. And Snape saw her. Recognized it. He told her what she was. A witch. I wanted to look away. Seeing her like that, before me, before Dad, before everything, it felt like I was intruding on a memory that wasn't mine. But I watched. Because she laughed when the flower opened. And I think, just for a moment, I heard the same laugh I sometimes still dream about. Dumbledore didn't say why this memory mattered. Not yet. He just looked at me afterward with that tired, endless gaze and said, we must understand who he was, before we can face who he's become. It's strange. To think Voldemort was once a boy in a house like that. Poor. Angry. Hidden. It doesn't excuse what he became. But it makes it feel more real. More terrifying. Because monsters made of shadow are one thing. But monsters made of memory? Those are harder to escape. September 12th, some parties are traps dressed up in tablecloths and sugar. And even when you're smiling, you feel the net slowly tightening around your shoulders. Slughorn hosted his first little supper last night. He called it informal. Said he just wanted to reconnect with promising young minds. But the table was laid out like a ministry gala. Silver platters, enchanted wine, candles that whispered names I didn't recognize. He placed me at the center of the table. Directly across from him. The honored guest. The boy who lived. The boy who wouldn't leave. He asked me about my childhood. What it was like growing up famous. He didn't know about the cupboard under the stairs. Didn't ask why I never speak of my parents without looking away. He was too busy nudging me toward Quidditch stories and newspaper clippings. As if that's all I am. Around me, the others smiled like foxes. Cormac McLagan bragged about his uncle at the ministry. Zachariah Smith name-dropped his grandfather until even Slughorn looked bored. Hermione sat stiff and polite, analyzing every word. Ginny, thank Merlin, made fun of the tablecloth. I'm not used to being wanted for anything but the scar. Slughorn says he admires me. But it's not admiration, not really. It's possession. He collects students like trophies. Like memories of greatness he can hold close in case the war swallows him too. I can't blame him. We're all trying to hold on to something right now. Even if it's just a name. Still, I can't shake the feeling that Slughorn is hiding something. The way his eyes flicker when Voldemort's name comes up. The way Dumbledore keeps asking me to watch him. Not challenge him. Just observe. Wait. There's a thread between Slughorn and Tom Riddle. It hasn't unraveled yet. But I can feel it pulling. And if I follow it far enough, I think I'll find the part of this war no one said aloud. September 18th, there are ghosts in the corridors this year. Not the usual kind. These ones wear Prefect badges and slither in robes. These ones vanish when you blink. Something's wrong with Malfoy. More than usual. He's not bragging. Not hexing first years. Not even pretending to laugh at Crabbe and Goyle's jokes. He's quiet. Focused. Pale in a way that doesn't look like fear, it looks like obsession. I've followed him twice now. Once to the 7th floor corridor. He stood in front of a blank stretch of wall like he was waiting for it to open. The second time, he ducked into Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Alone. He didn't come out for nearly an hour. Ron thinks I'm imagining things. Hermione too, though she says it nicer. They think I'm seeing shadows where there aren't any. But I know what I saw. Malfoy bought something in Nocturne Alley over the summer. He was talking to Borgin. Threatening him. He's up to something. He doesn't look scared. He looks chosen. And that's worse. There's something else. On the Marauders map, his dot keeps disappearing. Not moving. Disappearing. Like he's not just hiding from people. He's hiding from Hogwarts itself. Fred and George have been selling Peruvian instant darkness powder. Distraction kits. Vanishing cabinets. I saw one listed in their backroom catalog, dangerous magic with a tidy little price tag. What if Malfoy has one? What if he's building something? Dumbledore's watching him. I can tell. But he won't tell me anything. He just gives me that look, half smile, half secret. Like I already know the answer but haven't said it out loud yet. I think Malfoy's a Death Eater. I think Voldemort's given him a task. And I think it has something to do with the castle. No one believes me. But I've seen the way Malfoy's eyes look when he thinks no one's watching. Like he's walking towards something he doesn't think he'll come back from. And I know that look. Because I've worn it too. September 25th, it was just sitting there. Tucked behind a pile of battered copies. No shimmer. No curse. No warning. Just a soft spine, stitched with secrets. The potions classroom felt different this year. Slughorn made it brighter. Fewer cobwebs. Laughter humming off the stone walls like the ghosts were being told to behave. I hadn't meant to take that book. We arrived late. Only a few battered copies left at the back of the cupboard. One of them was nearly falling apart, creased pages, ink stains, notes scribbled into every margin like it had lived a whole second life beneath the printed one. The moment I opened it, I knew it wasn't normal. Whoever wrote in it, whoever owned it, was brilliant. More than that. Precise. Creative. Dangerous. Instructions rewritten. Corrections made. Potions that should have taken me hours suddenly turned to gold in my hands. I brewed draught of living death like I'd known it since birth. Slughorn nearly cried. He gave me a bottle of Felix Felicis, liquid luck, for being the best in the class. Ron nearly fell over. Hermione looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. But I hadn't cheated. I just followed the margins. In the back, there's a name. This book is the property of the Half-Blood Prince. That's it. No other clue. No surname. No house. Just a title. I've started reading the notes late at night. Some are harmless. Better methods for stirring clockwise, which ingredients to slice rather than crush. But others? They're not what you'd find in any textbook. Langlock, a charm that glues the tongue to the roof of the mouth. Levi corpus, non-verbal, hoist someone by the ankle into the air. Jinxes. Hexes. Little curses too clever to be accidental. I should feel cautious. I should hand it over. But I won't. Because when I follow his instructions, his magic, I feel sharper. Clearer. Almost like I'm remembering something instead of learning it. I asked Hermione what she thought of the name. She said Half-Blood Prince sounded pompous. But there was something in her voice, something wary. As if she could sense the power in the ink even without seeing it. The thing is, I like the way it feels. The edge of it. The precision. The certainty. There's no prophecy in that book. No destiny. Just lines to follow, spells to master, control to take. I think that's what scares me. I think that's why I won't stop reading. I don't know who the prince was, but I'm starting to feel like I do. Like he's whispering through the margins, just for me. And I'm listening. October 2nd, I used to think Quidditch was simple. Fly fast. Catch the snitch. Win the match. But leadership, that's different. It's not about the broom. It's about the weight in your voice when you tell someone to trust you. They made me captain this year. McGonagall handed me the badge like she was giving me an inheritance. She smiled, sharp and proud, like she expected me to turn into Oliver Wood overnight. Ron whooped. Ginny winked. Hermione said she thought I deserved it, and then subtly reminded me not to let it go to my head. Which I didn't plan to. But it's harder than I expected. Tryouts were chaos. Every second year with a new broom showed up. Slughorn's Slug Club sent 3 boys from Ravenclaw just to observe. And Romilda Vane kept asking if I needed a personal cheering squad. That's a no. In the end, I built a solid team. Ron back as keeper. Ginny, brilliant Ginny, playing chaser with this wild kind of elegance. She flies like she's laughing at gravity. New beaters, Andrew Kirk and Jack Sloper, a bit unpredictable, but with good aim. Demelza Robbins and Katie Bell rounded it out. Strong, fast, smart. We're not perfect. But when we're in the air, and the wind cuts through the shouts, and the sun hits the hoops just right, I remember why I love it. Except, now it's mine to lose. Every missed goal is my fault. Every fumble, every penalty, my responsibility. Ron froze during the first practice scrimmage. Completely froze. Didn't move when the quaffle flew past him. I wanted to yell. Instead, I swallowed it and clapped him on the shoulder. He smiled. Weakly. I know what pressure does. I wear it every day. It doesn't help that Malfoy's team is getting better. He's barely on the pitch these days, always off skulking or vanishing, but his stand-ins are meaner. Quicker. There's something brewing under all of it. Even the game feels heavier. Like it's not just for points anymore. Like it's the only place we can still feel in control. And then there's Ginny. She's more than I remember. Not just a Weasley. Not just Ron's sister. She's fire and focus and that laugh that cracks something open in my chest. She's dating Dean Thomas now. But sometimes when we pass in the corridor, she looks at me like she knows what I'm thinking. And maybe she does. The Prince's book helps me with energy. With planning. With confidence, somehow. He doesn't talk about sports, of course. But he's making me sharper in ways I didn't expect. Like my brain's moving a second ahead of the broom. Still, this year, this team, it's more than just winning. It's holding something together when everything else is falling apart. It's choosing joy even when war is whispering at the walls. So I fly? Because it reminds me that I'm still Harry. Not the chosen one. Not the boy who has to survive. Just a seeker. Still chasing something just out of reach. October 18th, I didn't know how fast everything could shift until I started noticing the gaps. The silence between jokes. The way your best mate starts laughing at things you don't find funny anymore. Or the way someone else starts laughing at him louder. Ron kissed Lavender. It happened after a match. We'd just beaten Slytherin, barely. He blocked a goal at the last second and the stands exploded. And there she was. Lavender Brown. Waiting by the changing room like it was fate. She flung herself at him. Arms around his neck. Mouth on his. Right there. In front of everyone. It should have been funny. But it wasn't. It was loud. Messy. Embarrassing, really. But Ron grinned like he'd just won the Triwizard Cup. Hermione didn't say anything. She just stared for a second, blank and too still, and then she turned and left the party without a word. I wanted to follow her. But I didn't. They haven't spoken since. She's burying herself in homework now, staying up late, pretending not to look at the sofa Lavender drapes herself across every evening. Ron is being proud, defensive, loud. Every time they snog in the corner, it's like he's shouting, "Look! Someone wants me." And I get it. I do. But I also miss him. The real him. The one who used to finish my sentences, or elbow me during breakfast, or lie awake and talk nonsense before we fell asleep in the dorms. Now it's just Lavender. And the quiet that follows her laughter. Ginny called him a prat. I didn't disagree. It's strange. How fast people change. How fast we change. Hermione's hurting, and she won't say it. Ron's winning something, and he doesn't even know what. And me? I'm just trying to keep the threads from breaking. I've been thinking about Ginny more lately. She's with Dean, still. But sometimes she walks past me and says something funny in that way of hers, sharp but warm, and my stomach flips. It's not the kind of thing I meant to notice. But I do. Classes are harder. Slughorn keeps asking me to tell stories about my childhood like I was raised in a castle instead of a cupboard. The Prince's book still helps. His handwriting feels familiar now, like a whisper I've come to trust. Hermione disapproves. Openly. But I don't stop. Because when everything feels like it's falling sideways, that inked advice keeps me upright. I don't know what's going to happen with Ron. Or Hermione. Or Ginny. But I know this. We're all growing into something we don't fully understand yet. And some part of me is afraid we won't come out of it together. October 30th, there's something about a closed door that makes you feel like you're already too late. I don't know what's behind it. But I know whatever it is, it's not meant to be opened. Not from the outside. I saw Malfoy again. He slipped through the shadows near the room of requirement. His footsteps silent, careful, like someone who's been practicing how not to be heard. I followed. But the corridor stayed blank. Just smooth stone and silence. He disappeared into nothing. Or rather, into something I can't see. I told Ron and Hermione. They listened, sort of. Hermione asked what proof I had. Ron shrugged and said, "It's Malfoy. He's always up to something. But I don't think they see the shape of it yet. This isn't just mischief. It's not house rivalry. It's ether mission." I went to Borgin and Burke's over the summer. He was there. He threatened Borgin. Now he's sneaking off again and again. And then I saw it. In the back of the shop. A vanishing cabinet. I didn't know what it was at first. Just a big, battered cupboard. Until I remembered. Fred and George shoved Montague into one last year, and he vanished for days. Said he was trapped in darkness. Said he could hear things, voices, muffled and far away. Like he was between places. There's a second one at Hogwarts. I'm sure of it. And I think Malfoy's trying to fix it. What if he's trying to connect the two? What if he's building a door between Hogwarts and Nocturne Alley? A hidden path into the castle? I don't know how yet. Or who he's letting in. But I know he's doing it. Filch found me poking around the 7th floor again. Gave me detention for loitering with intent. If only he knew. The problem is, Dumbledore won't tell me anything. Every time I try to bring it up, he changes the subject. Says I need to stay focused on my lessons. On Slughorn. On the past. But what about the present? What about the trap being built now, in our own walls? I don't trust Malfoy. I never have. But this year, it's different. He's working for someone. And I think, whatever that cabinet does, it's the key. I just have to figure out what it opens, before he does. November 12th, it didn't feel like luck. Not exactly. It felt like certainty. Like I'd already seen the world tilt in my favor. And was just calmly stepping through the moment where it happened. I took the Felix Felicis today. The bottle of golden potion Slughorn gave me back in September. The prize for brewing draught of living. Past the greenhouses. Into the edge of the forbidden forest. That's where I found Slughorn. Harvesting venom from Aragog, Hagrid's dead acromantula. Of course he was. I helped. Said all the right things. Let him reminisce. Let him boast. Let him feel like someone I needed, not someone I was cornering. And then I asked him about Tom Riddle. About a conversation they had, years ago. The one he's tried so hard to forget. He didn't want to give it up. He said it was a mistake. Said Riddle was charming. Persuasive. Curious in ways that felt flattering, until they didn't. But in the end, he gave me the real memory. Slipped it into the vial himself. His hands trembled. He said, "Don't think too badly of me." I don't. He made a mistake. We all have. The difference is, some mistakes change the world. When I brought the memory to Dumbledore, he looked at me differently. Not proud. Not surprised. Almost relieved. Like he was waiting for me to prove something to myself. We haven't viewed it yet. That's tomorrow. But I feel it, coiling at the edge of my thoughts. Something big. Something true. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm not stumbling in the dark anymore. Just walking a path I was meant to find. November 13th, there are truths that don't make a sound when they fall into your mind. No thunder. No scream. Just a slow settling. And you realize that the war isn't coming, it's already here. We watched the memory. Dumbledore and I, sitting side by side over the pensive. He didn't say much before it started. Just looked at me, steady and calm, like a lantern held aloft in the fog. And then we leaned in. The memory was cleaner than before, no smoke, no static. Slughorn, younger but still round and blinking, sat in a velvet armchair. And across from him was Tom Riddle. Not yet Voldemort. But already close. His eyes dark with curiosity. His voice soft. Charming. Too smooth to trust. He asked Slughorn about Horcruxes. Said he wasn't curious, just academically. Asked what would happen if someone made more than one. More than 2. 7. Slughorn tried to laugh it off. Tried to say it was a theoretical question. But even in the memory, you could see the chill in his spine. And Riddle smiled. Like he already knew the answer. A Horcrux is made when you split your soul. By committing murder. You tear your soul apart, trap a fragment inside an object, anchoring yourself to the world even if your body dies. It's how Voldemort survived the night he tried to kill me. Why he didn't die? Because he'd already split his soul. Not once. But 7 times. Dumbledore thinks he made 6 Horcruxes, and that the 7th part, the one that didn't split, is what lives in his current body. The diary. The ring. There must be more. More pieces of him, hidden, cursed, waiting. And unless we find and destroy every one of them, we can't kill him. Not truly. I felt sick afterward. Not from the horror of it, but from the clarity. From knowing the path in front of me is darker than I imagined. Not just a duel. Not just a prophecy. But a hunt for pieces of a man who wanted to become deathless. Dumbledore says he's going to take me with him. To find one. Not yet. But soon. And I said yes. Of course I did. Because this is the reason I'm here. Not to play Quidditch. Not to pass exams. Not even to survive. But to end this. I just hope I'm enough. December 25th, I always forget how loud the burrow is. Not just in volume, but in feeling. It hums. It moves. Even the walls seem to shift with every footstep or laugh or bang from Fred and George's old room upstairs. It shouldn't feel like home. But it does. Mrs. Weasley cried when she saw me. She always does. She pulled me into a hug that smelled like cinnamon and flour and a little bit like safety. Mr. Weasley tried to give me space, but even he was watching me out of the corner of his eye like he wasn't sure if I'd vanish if he blinked. I know they all know about the prophecy now. That Dumbledore's been telling them pieces. That the wars carved new shadows onto all of our faces. But for a few days, we pretended it wasn't there. We decorated the tree. I helped Ginny hang some of the charmed stars and she laughed when one of them exploded glitter in my hair. I didn't mind. Hermione arrived late. Her parents still try to hold on to her normal. Ron had already eaten half the gingerbread house by then. I got a sweater again. Green. With a golden snitch knitted right in the middle. Ron's was maroon. Again. He groaned. I smiled. Some things don't change. But something felt off. Tighter than usual. It was too quiet between Ron and Hermione. They didn't argue, didn't snap. Just avoided each other like two magnets flipped the wrong way. And Ginny and Dean had one of those whispered fights where you can feel every word, even if you don't hear them. I stayed out of it. Mostly. On Christmas night, we stepped outside to breathe the cold. The air was sharp and silver, the kind of air that makes your lungs ache in a good way. I stood by the garden wall, hands deep in my pockets, watching the frost crawl up the gnome statues. Ginny came out and stood beside me. Didn't say anything at first. Then she said, "You think too loud, you know." And I laughed, because I do. She looked up at the stars. I looked at her. For a second, everything went quiet. Not the awkward kind. The kind that feels like a held breath between pages. Then the fire came. It wasn't a normal fire. Not accidental. Not magical in the friendly sort of way. Someone set the burrow ablaze. We ran. Shouted. Wands drawn. The sky lit up orange. Billowing smoke. Mr. Weasley yelling. Ginny darting toward the source before anyone could stop her. We didn't find the attacker. They were gone before we reached the flames. It wasn't about destruction. It was a message. Nowhere is safe. Not even here. The burrow didn't burn completely. Just part of the field. But the scorch marks remain. And so does the smell. And so does the knowledge. Voldemort's not waiting anymore. He's reminding us we're in the middle of this war, whether we feel ready or not. I'm trying to hold on to the laughter. The sweaters. The moments with Ginny. But it's getting harder. March 16th, I used to think there was no such thing as bad magic. Only bad intentions. But today? I learned magic can cut deeper than anyone ever should. It happened fast. Too fast for me to stop it. I found Malfoy in the boys' bathroom, alone. Crying. That's what stopped me, at first. The sound. He was standing over a sink, gripping the porcelain so tightly his knuckles had gone white. His shoulders were shaking. Not like he'd been hexed. Like he was breaking apart from the inside. I said his name. Not softly. I still don't know if I meant to hurt him. He turned. Drew his wand. Said something about me spying. About me being finished. Then he cast first. I reacted. The spell left my lips before I even knew what it would do. Sectum Sempra. It was one of the half-blood princes. Written in the margins like a secret only we shared. No warning. No note. Just the spell. Malfoy screamed. The slash appeared across his chest like he'd been sliced by an invisible sword. Blood poured out. Too much. Too fast. It splattered across the mirror. The sink. The floor. He fell. I couldn't move. Snape burst in. He didn't ask questions. Just dropped beside Malfoy and began to heal him, his face twisted with fury, disgust, maybe fear. The magic was strange, older than anything we learn in class. He saved him. And then he turned to me. He demanded the book. The prince's book. I told him I'd thrown it away. I lied. I hid it in the room of requirement. Buried it beneath a broken cabinet, where even I might not find it again. Because I can't use it anymore. Not after this. The thing is, I didn't mean to. I didn't know it would do that. But I said the words. I pointed my wand. I let power answer before I asked the price. Snape gave me detention for the rest of the term. Dumbledore hasn't said anything yet. I'm sure he knows. I've tried to explain it to myself a dozen times. Malfoy struck first. He's dangerous. He's working for Voldemort. But that doesn't undo what happened. That doesn't change the sound of his scream. There's blood on the floor of the second-floor bathroom. Scrubbed clean by now, I'm sure. But I still see it. Every time I close my eyes. Magic is trust. And I broke it. June 14th, the sea never forgets. Dumbledore brought me to the edge of it tonight, and I swear, the waves whispered his name like they'd been waiting for him to return. I followed. Because I always would. But I wasn't ready for what waited in the dark. He said we were going. Didn't ask. Didn't explain. Just looked at me across the desk and said, "Tonight, Harry." I didn't pack anything. Didn't tell anyone. We just left. Through the gates. Past the village. And then, crack, apparat to a stretch of jagged cliff on the edge of the world. The wind screamed. The rocks beneath us were slick and steep, ancient and sharp as dragon glass. And the ocean crashed below like it wanted to eat the shore. But Dumbledore didn't pause. He just stepped toward the edge like it was a corridor he'd walked 100 times. There was a cave carved into the cliff wall. You couldn't see it from above unless you knew what to look for, unless you could feel the magic pulsing underneath the stone. And it was pulsing. Wrong. Rotten. Like something had bled into the air itself. We went in. Wand-light trembling against the wet walls. The ceiling low. The path narrow. Then we reached it. A black lake. Still. Perfectly still. In the center was a stone island. And in the center of that, a pedestal. And on the pedestal, a goblet filled with a glowing liquid. Dumbledore said the potion had to be drunk. That we couldn't touch it. Couldn't vanish it. Couldn't cheat the enchantment. Someone had to drink it. And he told me, no matter what happened, I had to make him finish. I wish I hadn't said yes. I wish I hadn't seen what it did to him. The first sip was bad. The second, worse. By the third, he was trembling. By the fifth, he was screaming. He cried out. Begged me to stop. Clutched at the stone and shouted things I didn't understand, pleading, shaking, like his soul was being boiled from the inside out. I tried to stop. But he wouldn't let me. Make me drink it, Harry, he gasped. So I did. Until the goblet was empty. Then the inferi came. From the lake. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Dead eyes. Wet hands. Bones and silence. They crawled from the water like the lake had been holding its breath just to let them out. I tried to fight, but they kept coming. I couldn't scream. Couldn't think. Just cold. Cold. And then the fire came. Blue and blinding and beautiful. Dumbledore raised his wand, shaking, barely standing. But he still summoned that wall of flame like he was made of stars. It roared around us, pushed the inferi back into the black. He saved us. Even broken, he still saved us. We got the Horcrux. A locket. Tucked inside the pedestal. But even as we left, I could feel something wrong with it. It wasn't finished. It wasn't the end. Just another piece of a riddle that refuses to be solved. Dumbledore's weak now. Barely standing. He let me apparate us back. For a moment, I held him. And it felt like the world had turned upside down. There's something coming. I can feel it. I don't know what it is yet. But it's already inside the castle. June 15th, it's hard to write when your hands are still shaking. Harder still when the person who always had the answers is gone. He trusted me. And I froze. We got back to the astronomy tower. I helped him up the steps, one hand around his arm, the other gripping the Horcrux so tightly I thought it would crack. Dumbledore was pale. His breath rattled. But he smiled at me. He actually smiled. Said, "Fetch Snape." But we never got the chance. The door burst open. Footsteps. Wands drawn. Draco Malfoy, face pale, wand shaking, eyes wide but not surprised. He had been waiting. He disarmed Dumbledore. I couldn't move. I was frozen, literally. Dumbledore had cast a silent spell before Malfoy entered. Full bodybind. Hidden under the invisibility cloak. I watched it all. Helpless. Invisible. Trapped. Malfoy spoke like someone who didn't want to be there. Like a boy reciting lines from a script he didn't write. He said he had to kill Dumbledore. That Voldemort ordered him. That the dark mark in the sky wasn't a warning, it was a signal. Dumbledore tried to save him. Even then. Even while unarmed and swaying on his feet. He offered Draco protection. Forgiveness. A way out. And Draco wanted to take it. You could see it. But he couldn't say the words. Then the others arrived. Death Eaters. Towering. Masked. Laughing like this was entertainment. They urged Draco on. But he couldn't do it. He lowered his wand. And that's when Snape came. I thought, just for a second, he's here to help. That's what Dumbledore meant. Fetch Snape. But Dumbledore looked at him and said, "Severus, please." And Snape raised his wand. And said, "Avada Kedavra." Green light. Like a sick sunrise behind my eyes. Dumbledore's body lifted, just for a second, and then fell. Over the edge. The sound his body made when it hit the ground. I can't forget it. Won't forget it. Not ever. Snape ran. I broke free of the spell. Ran after him. Screamed. I fought him. But I couldn't match him. He didn't even look angry. Just resolved. He deflected every curse. Knocked me back like I was nothing. And then he said it. "You dare use my own spells against me, Potter? I am the Half-Blood Prince." He vanished into the night. Like a ghost that had always been waiting to disappear. We brought Dumbledore's body back. McGonagall tried to stay composed. Hagrid broke down sobbing. The whole school felt like a church with no prayers left. The locket? It was a fake. Inside was a note. Signed R.A.B. The real Horcrux is still out there. Dumbledore died for a decoy. I don't know how to grieve yet. But I know this. He trusted Snape. And Snape murdered him. June 30th, it rained the night before the funeral. Not a storm, just soft rain, like the sky was mourning without making a fuss about it. I stood by the window and watched it bead down the glass. I didn't cry. Not then. Dumbledore's body was laid in white silk. They placed him in a tomb by the lake. Marble. Clean. Cold. It glowed faintly under the summer sun, as if the stone itself remembered the light he used to carry with him. Every seat was filled. Ministers. Teachers. Ghosts. Even centaurs stood at the tree line. Firenze bowed his head. I sat between Ron and Hermione. Hermione held my hand, tight, trembling. Ron didn't say anything, but his shoulder pressed against mine like an anchor. Forks flew overhead once. Just once. A long, slow arc. His song broke me. It sounded like sunrise and goodbye. When they sealed the tomb, I felt it. Finality. The weight of it. The truth that Dumbledore was gone, and he wasn't coming back with answers, or a plan, or even a gentle nudge in the right direction. It's just me now. Ginny came to me afterward. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying anymore. We stood by the water and I told her it couldn't work. Not now. Not while I'm hunting Horcruxes. Not while Voldemort is still alive. She nodded. Like she already knew. I wanted to hold her. But I let go. And walked away. Ron and Hermione followed me back up to the castle. I told them everything. About the Horcruxes. The hunt. R.A.B. The locket. The diary. The ring. About how we have to find the rest. Destroy them. All of them. And that I'm not coming back to Hogwarts next year. Hermione said, "We're coming with you." Ron didn't hesitate. Just nodded. And that was it. No argument. No speech. Just loyalty. I don't know where the road starts. But I know where it ends. And I know I won't walk it alone. The war is real now. The time for waiting is over. The time for hiding is gone. And I'm done hoping someone else will save us. Dumbledore's gone. But the fight isn't. July 1st, the castle feels hollow now. Like it's holding its breath. I stood outside the gates today, just for a moment, and looked back at the turrets. At the towers. At the place that used to feel like the safest spot in the world. And all I could think was, this is where everything changed. I've been thinking a lot about Hogwarts. Not just the lessons or the ghosts or the floating candles, but the heartbeat of it. The way the castle knows things before you do. How its staircases never take you where you want, only where you need. This year, I think it tried to warn me. There were signs. Cracks in the floorboards. The way Dumbledore looked at me after each memory. The chill that lingered near Malfoy like a second skin. Even the room of requirement felt darker. It started with the potions book. That little bit of genius scribbled in the margins. The Half-Blood Prince made me better. Faster. Stronger. But not wiser. And in the end, the price of trusting his spells was paid in blood. Slughorn came back. A good teacher, even if he plays favorites. But what mattered more was the memory he tried to bury about Horcruxes. About how Voldemort didn't just kill, he split himself. Again and again. And again. We watched the memories. Dumbledore took me deeper than ever into Tom Riddle's past. Orphanage. Hogwarts. The ring. The cup. The locket. All pieces of a puzzle I was never meant to finish. But now must. And there was Draco. I wanted so badly to catch him. To prove he was up to something. And he was. But he was also scared. Cornered. He didn't want to kill Dumbledore. Not really. But Snape did. I trusted Snape less than anyone. And still, some part of me wanted to be wrong about him. But on that tower, when it mattered most, he didn't hesitate. He cast the spell. Green light. Gone. And Dumbledore. He drank poison for us. For me. He believed I could finish this. That I'd find the Horcruxes. That I'd end it. That belief weighs more than a prophecy ever could. There was good this year too. Ginny. I let myself feel something real for the first time. Even if I had to let it go. Ron and Hermione. Still beside me. Even now. Especially now. They're not just coming with me, they chose to. And the war? It's no longer outside the walls. It's in the halls. In our dreams. In every whispered name in the corridors. No one's safe. Not really. But there's still hope. There's always hope. Even. Stopped glowing. If you're still listening, thank you. And if you'd like to hear the final part of Harry's diary, the last year, the last battle, the final choice, leave a comment below. Tell us you're ready for part 3. And before you drift off completely, here's something to dream on. What magical object was stolen from Gringotts in Harry's final year, and why did it burn to the touch? Leave your guess in the comments. We'll answer it in the next chapter. But for now, the castle is quiet. The lights are low. And the story waits.